pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15th order imposing strict limits on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Great Barrington Planning Board will be conducted by a remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with the right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, the members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so by joining the meeting via Zoom, by computer, or by dialing the phone per the instructions on the agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. All votes will be roll call vote, and we'll start out with a roll call agenda. Let's see. Malcolm?
I'm here.
Jonathan?
I'm here.
Pedro?
Pedro's not here.
Pedro's here, but he's muted. I see him. Is he
That's
frozen too?
That's the best way for Pedro. Right?
He's here. Okay. Jeremy?
Yeah.
Do we have Garfield via phone?
No, we don't have Garfield.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Pedro, yes. Okay, so no Garfield and Brandy. I'm here as well. All right, great. Thanks, everybody. And so our first order of business are the minutes of the March 11th meeting. They were sent out and they were amended. Do we have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Jonathan?
Second.
Malcolm seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, we'll do roll call vote. Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Pedro?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Brandy? Aye. Okay. Our next order of business are the public hearing for the zoning amendments pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 5. We need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Malcolm seconded. Any discussion? Okay. We'll do roll call vote. Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Pedro? Just give me a thumbs up.
Can't even do that.
He's having a connectivity issue. Jeremy?
Aye.
Brandy? Aye.
And I think, Brandy, we may have Garfield with us now.
You
Hi,
do.
Hi, Garfield.
Except
How are
I'm
you?
having trouble. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, so I think we want to get Pedro. Was that an aye on opening the public hearing? Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
that's fine. Sorry,
Thank you.
I keep getting bumped off for some reason. Maybe my internet is
trouble with
not doing
broadband.
so
A dial-up.
Brandy.
Okay. All right. So Chris,
Yeah.
we've opened the public hearing. Do you have explanation of the proposed amendments?
Yeah, why don't I go ahead and summarize the public hearing notice. Planning Board will hold a public hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, to provide an opportunity to comment on the following proposed changes to the zoning bylaw and or the zoning map. Amending the downtown business mixed-use B3 district regulations, amending Section 7.18, which regulates marijuana establishments, amending the table of use regulations to allow marijuana establishments by special permit in I2 zones, and amending the zoning map in Section 9.11 to rezone portions of the MXD district to an R3 district. A copy was on the website and in the town clerk's office. We did receive one written comment on one of the matters, which we'll get to, and that's it. Take it away, Brandy.
Great, thank you. So we have opened the public hearing. We've received an explanation of the hearing. And what we're going to do this evening is we'll take each of the items. There's 4 items in total. We'll take them each one at a time. For the citizens petitions, we'd like the petitioners, if they're here, to provide a brief presentation on their petition. And then we'll take comments and questions from the public, comments and questions from the board. And then we'll move on to the next petition item. So the first petition item for the evening is the proposed amendment to section 7.18, regulating marijuana establishments. And do we have a Ms. Lubert, you're here to represent the petition?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you very much.
Oh, Michelle, just before you start, this is Chris. There are 17 folks in the audience, just so everybody knows.
Thanks, Chris. My name is Michelle Lubert of 70 Division Street. And at this time, I just want to comment that although I submitted the citizen petition to the town clerk's office for review and consideration, that it's actually the work of a group of people who have drafted it. But I've been tapped to do this brief presentation tonight. This petition is to amend the town's current marijuana bylaw, 7.18, and it is fairly well known, having been presented at the March 2020 Planning Board public hearing. Little has changed with the petition since then, other than a couple of very minor revisions to better clarify the petitioner's intent. The petition was to be presented at the 2020 annual town meeting and special town meeting. However, citizen petitioners were not given the opportunity to do so. So here we are tonight with a brief outline of our amendment. The good news is that now is an opportune time to present this petition. Citizens of several communities are currently reviewing their town marijuana bylaws, amending their bylaws, and some are, for the first time, creating bylaws. These towns include, but are not limited to, Sandusfield, Williamstown, Sheffield, Lee, Lenox, and Egremont. As a matter of fact, Pittsfield city leaders have approved a ban of commercial-scale marijuana projects. As stated in a February 23, 2021 Berkshire Eagle article, Pittsfield city councilors expressed, quote, concerns about the operations creating odor and negatively affecting residents' quality of life, close quote, and, quote, expressed a desire to protect the city's open space and neighborhoods, close quote. We, the citizen petitioners, wish to do the same. This amendment has been represented by some as anti-marijuana. This is an inaccurate representation. Rather, the purpose of the amendment is to better align 7.18 with the objectives, intent, and spirit of the award-winning and much referenced town master plan. As stated in this master plan, quote, residents expect and deserve quiet neighborhoods free from odor, glare, noise, and other impacts of commercial activity, close quote. So how do the citizen petitioners propose that we're going to do this through this bylaw? Number one, by returning the buffer zone to 500 feet from 200 feet, as stated in state regulations. Also by expanding protections, not just for schools, but other places where children congregate as well, such as playgrounds and town-owned beaches. Two, citing the zoning bylaws table of uses, no marijuana establishments would be allowed in residential districts or areas. Three, through this amendment, neighborhoods would be protected from nuisances and dangers such as odors, smoke, dust, glare from lighting, noise, and more. Next, excluding home cultivation, no outdoor cultivation would be allowed within 200 feet of a property line. Next, no outdoor home cultivation would be allowed within 50 feet of any property line. In closing, a Great Barrington Planning Board member commented on a large-scale marijuana project in his neighborhood, stating that he lived in a, quote, quiet residential neighborhood, close quote, that would certainly be, quote, adversely affected, close quote, by the proposed project. Now let us take a moment to think about this board member's comment and then ask yourself, don't all residents deserve to enjoy their neighborhoods and property? Our master plan says yes. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. All right, so first we'll take comments and questions from members of the public. If you'd like to make a comment or ask a question of the petitioner, please raise your hand and Chris Rumble will recognize you. Please remember to state your name for our records. Looks like we have one hand up. Chris, you're muted.
Why don't you go ahead and call, like you usually do, you call them. And
Sure. So I see Denise Forbes. Ms. Forbes?
Hi, I'm Denise Forbes, 325 North Plain Road. I would like to say I totally agree with this amendment and I would like to see it go through. Thank you.
Thank you. The next hand I see up is Trevor Forbes. Mr. Forbes, you're
Thank you,
muted.
Trevor Forbes, also 325 North Plain. Yeah, I'm on, I think, yeah. 325 North Plain Road. Again, I'd like to voice my support of this and certainly hope that, given the spirit of at least one of the planning board members' letter to the town of Egremont, can be reflected in the way that this is voted on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a hand up for Terry. Terry, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, sorry. Yes, I also agree and would like to see this amendment go through.
And Terry, would you mind just telling us your full name?
Yeah, it's Therese Gasparo Hobart.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I
Hey,
see a hand
We
up.
need an address from her, Brandy?
Do we need an address? I don't know if we do.
Typically so that you can prove their residence.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's 325 North Plain Road in Housatonic.
Okay, great. Thank you. Miss Larissa Yapel?
Larissa?
Hi guys. This is Larissa Yapel. I live at 15 Castle Hill Avenue, and I'm requesting that the planning board positively recommend this citizen petition to town meeting, and I encourage my fellow citizens to vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more members of the public that wish to comment? Anna Stanton? Ms. Stanton, you're muted, so just unmute yourself.
Anna Christine Stanton, 69 Division Street, Great Barrington. I would like to support this citizen petition and hope that you give it a recommendation to move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other members of the public that wish to make any comments or ask any questions of the petitioners?
Brandy.
Hang on, Garfield, we'll get to board members in just a minute.
Okay. Thank you.
Michael Kernan? You just want to unmute yourself, sir?
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Michael Kernan, 12 Mahawi Street. I just want to be short about this and say that, pot farms, in my opinion, do not belong in residential areas. And this board and other governing bodies should do everything they can to protect our residential areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Any
Brandy,
other members?
if
Go
there's
ahead.
none others, we did receive a written comment on this one.
Sure, if you've got a written comment, I don't see any additional hands at this time, so if you've got a written comment that we want to put into the record, that'd be great, and then we'll go to board members.
Sure, Brandy, I'll give this to you, or Kim, I'll give this to you for the record. To the Planning Board of Great Barrington, I am a physician trained in public health, and I have lived at, this is from Susan Lord, and I've lived at 203 Highland Street in Housatonic for 12 years. I'm writing to you to support the proposed amendment to section 7.18. The last couple of years, like many residents of Housatonic, I spent dozens of hours educating myself about the Fulcrum proposal, contributing financially for legal and scientific consultants, attending and participating in countless meetings to protect my neighborhood from a project I felt, and the science backed me, parenthesis, would significantly damage the health and quality of life in our village. Since defeating that threat, at least temporarily, I see that marijuana corporations have been circling the Berkshires like vultures trying to get a foothold in our towns. I want to be an informed and active participant in our democratic town governance, but I don't want to go through the extraordinary effort to fight off these corporations again and again. I have noticed that it is the handful of neighbors who will be directly affected by marijuana businesses who often fight alone for their neighborhoods, while others who live further away are unaware or disinterested until their own neighborhood is threatened. Then it's a different matter. I am supporting the changes proposed for 7.18 to protect our neighborhoods, our children, our health, and the quality of life we voted for in the master plan for our town. These changes are reasonable as they are in keeping with the regulations of surrounding towns, and they will not inhibit thoughtful growth of business in the town. Let's combine the efforts of all our neighborhoods to reaffirm the master plan and a quote quality of life bottom line unquote for Great Barrington and for the Berkshires rather than selling off pieces of it for someone else's bottom line. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. All right, so with that, we'll move on to comments and questions from the board. Garfield, I know you said you had a question.
I have a statement, I guess. Being a member of the associate member of the board, I am fully behind the amendment, and I fully endorse that it should be endorsed. And I think we should learn on the planning board a new word, and it's not so new. It's called no. Not so hard to say. It's easy. What was that? One bomb? No. I against it adamantly, and that's my opinion. I think we should push this forward and bring things back the way they should be.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Do any of the other board members have any questions or comments for the petitioner?
I have a question. In 718.5 says that there will be no marijuana establishments which create a nuisance to abutters. What's a nuisance and how many abutters?
Hi, Malcolm.
Anyone?
Oh, is it okay, Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay. And I just want to point out other people who participated in the crafting of this may respond to questions. Malcolm, I'm so glad you asked that question because I was looking at the bylaws of other communities as well as our own communities. And I was somewhat taken aback about that little bit of vagueness that is written into our bylaws. As a matter of fact, Pedro Pachano, I think, was the person, if I'm not mistaken, that brought up the question about the word area in our petition when we presented March 2020. And I studied other communities' bylaws, and we made a change. We inserted the word surrounding area. The reason why I did this, I consider this planning board and certainly Mr. Rembold experts at this. I went through our own bylaws, and I'm not on camera, but I'm holding several examples in our own bylaws where the word surrounding area is used. As a matter of fact, there's no explanation what that is. The one bylaw, which was actually scary to me, it says immediate area with no explanation of what immediate area is. So in this case, I think there is a phrase in our bylaws that refer to nuisance and noise with no explanation as well. So Malcolm, I was following the lead of our own planning board here. And do I know who those abutters are?
How many abutters does it take to prohibit a marijuana establishment?
I did not put that in the bylaw.
So one abutter.
If you're an abutter.
So you feel that one abutter claiming that it would create a nuisance should invalidate the medical establishment.
Well, you have to remember, if it impacts the surrounding area, it's going to incorporate other people in the surrounding area.
It says, or the surrounding area. So if one abutter says this is going to create a nuisance, does that invalidate the?
And then it would go before a special permit granting authority and be discussed, like many of ours.
So it says that the use shall not be allowed, which creates a nuisance to abutters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So it's you really.
But the thing is, why are the rights of one person any less than 5, than 10, than 20?
No, that's okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Um,
You had another question, I think.
Actually, I have a comment to make because despite the fact that everybody's saying that this is going to regulate marijuana, what this is going to do in the town is prohibit marijuana. And there are 5 specific clauses that will prohibit marijuana. Number 1, the clause that says that no marijuana establishment shall be within 500 feet of any facility in which children congregate. Now, to me, that means any house that has children. So you can't have any marijuana facility within 500 feet of any facility where children congregate.
That's not quite accurate, Malcolm. It says a home is not a facility. If you look at the CCC, 3 Cs, rules, there's a definition in there as to where children congregate. A home is not a facility. A residence is not a facility. This language was actually plucked right out of a neighboring community.
Yeah, but not out of the CCC, not out of the law.
Well, no, what I'm saying is if you look at the CCC, there is some definition in there as what, for example, a bus stop is not considered where children commonly congregate. Why is that? If you look at the CCC, some of the detail on the regs, it's because one of the reasons is because bus stops can change all the time, and that is correct. A bus stop can be moved every year, school year. Therefore, it would make it unmanageable for a planning board or a select board to try to control a business in that respect. So, I would suggest looking at the regs a little closer before annual town meeting, and we can debate it on the town meeting floor.
May I ask a question that sort of follows on where you are, Malcolm, with this?
Please.
Michelle, did you happen to do any sort of exercise where you looked at what area is left over in town if we use this 500-foot setback for all the items that are listed here: childcare facilities, libraries, playgrounds, parks, athletic fields, places of worship, town beaches, and then also residential districts, since that's also included here? What is left?
Well, with a full-time job and serving the town of Great Barrington, do I have the tools and support available to me that the planning board does? No, I do not. But I do know this. The reason why the 500 feet was reduced to 200 feet was to allow businesses on Main Street in Great Barrington. That was stated during a select board meeting and due to the Dewey Academy. However, in doing so, it exposed other areas to issues if businesses came in. So, it's almost the town of Great Barrington leadership logic is just the reverse of what you're saying, Randy. Well, that is by reducing it to 200 feet, it allows for the businesses on Main Street in Great Barrington. And it was stated at a select board meeting that was because of Dewey Academy. That being said, yes, Kate Burke said it during a select board meeting. Now, if you want to ask me exactly what the meeting is, I'll do my homework and pour through a year's worth of meetings and find the quote. In any event, in doing so, it has exposed other areas and neighborhoods. And that is the opinion of this group.
So you haven't taken any effort to figure out whether any marijuana establishment could be established in town.
It would, the thing is, Malcolm, let's be reasonable here. I don't have the tools available to me, nor the time with a full-time plus job in education to do that, nor
So
does.
we're going to prohibit marijuana in town because we don't have enough time to figure out where it.
Well, Malcolm, I just wanted,
The planning board to put a citizen on the spot, especially a planning board that has town council whose fees are paid.
Michelle,
I'm
I'm asking Malcolm to sort of back down on that. My question was really.
I am sorry, Michelle. I
apologize too.
I'm sorry, Michelle, because I truly respect you, Michelle, and I'm sorry.
My question is not meant to be inflammatory. It's just trying to get to the issue of, has some thought been given to whether or not there are areas within the town where this use is acceptable? Because the board did go through that exercise when 17.18 was passed. So I'm just wanting to understand where you guys are coming from the information standpoint.
But also, was an exercise taken as well on the reverse, on the flip, to see what areas of the town of Great Barrington could be negatively impacted by a reduction to 200 feet? And you have, the planning board has resources available to it, such as town staff, town council, and expertise to do that research. Was that done?
We did, yeah. We did a very extensive review of different areas in town and potential use. And I'm sure Jonathan can chime in, but I see Pedro wanted to ask a question as well.
Well, I want to make a comment that I did take a few moments actually last year to try to figure out where any marijuana establishment could occur. And there, from what I noticed then, there's a small area which is around where Theory is. It's basically about 2 or 3 blocks north and across the street from it, where a store could open up. And on South Main Street, there's about the same amount of space, but pretty much would outlaw the stores anywhere else in town. And Michelle, I have a question for you. I have 2 questions.
And I just want to point out, if with the chair's permission, as I said, other people had participated in the crafting of this. If Chris sees a raised hand, I don't know whether that will be allowed by the chair, at your discretion. I'm sorry, Pedro.
So for you and for the rest of the folks who helped you write this and who were concerned about the Fulcrum project, are you aware that your proposal still allows marijuana by special permit on the Van Duzenville site?
This was not particularly with Van Duzenville in mind. It's town-wide.
Okay, well, so that your proposal would still allow a facility to open up there. The other thing
May I just make a comment?
Sure, go ahead.
I certainly hope that the planning board doesn't construct bylaws to protect particular areas, nor does this amendment. It's a town-wide bylaw amendment. And I just want to point out the businesses that are already in place would not be, if somebody had asked that, I think at annual town meeting, would the businesses already in place be shut down or whatever? That's not the case either. That's not the intent, to close businesses.
All right, I just have one more comment, if I may.
Sure, and there are a couple of hands raised, so I just want to get to those when you're done.
Well, maybe take them because perhaps they have something to do with my first comment.
Okay, and I think, Malcolm, you probably have a continuing comment as well. So, Trevor Forbes, your hand is raised. Did you want to speak, sir? Just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yep, I'm unmuted. Thank you very much, Chair.
Nope, you're muted again.
Is that better?
Yes.
You can hear me this time.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience in this. But just like to endorse what some of the comments that Michelle has made on this particular aspect, and also just point out that the town of Great Barrington, the planning board, etc., select board, still have the special permit process that can actually deal with these particular issues. And I guess you also have the ability, should you wish to grandfather what has already been allowed in place. So the whole aspect of this amendment is not to prohibit marijuana dispensaries or even some of the fabrication facilities that we have in Great Barrington. Rather, it is to try and at least put in guidelines that are in line with the guidelines that the Cannabis Control Commission of Massachusetts has put in place. And a lot of our peer towns and cities have adopted, but we haven't.
Okay, thank you very much.
What I wanted to say. Thank you.
I have Ed Abrams with a hand raised.
Thank you. I just wanted to correct Pedro. There is a dance school across the street from Theory Wellness. So Theory Wellness and that area would not be eligible to have a marijuana facility of any kind. So there is this, in effect, zones marijuana out of business, which I'm pretty sure the CCC doesn't allow us to do. If we want to put marijuana out of business, we need to take it to a vote. Since we were a community that voted in favor, we would need to take it to a vote at the ballot. So if I'm not critiquing the rest of Pedro's search, but that location is not eligible since the dance school is there. That's all.
Thank you, Ed. All right, Pedro, you had a continuing question for Michelle?
Well, I had questions too about how you define nuisance, odor, and noise, and I respect Michelle's response to Malcolm's question, but I would just like to maybe inform Michelle that we do have a noise ordinance in town, and I think if this were to go through, we were to evaluate a noise complaint there, it would have to be evaluated with regards to that noise ordinance. So I just wanted to point that out. I thought it might be helpful.
Jeremy, did you have a question? I see your hand is raised.
No, I mean, it's more of a comment, so I can hold it till later.
It's questions and comments, so go ahead.
So I was pretty, in open meeting, I was pretty vocal that I was against the legalization of marijuana only because I thought it was going to lead to the commercialization of it. And at the time after the town had passed it and the state had passed it, or the town had voted and the state election had passed it, I was pretty vocal that, if that was the time for the town to, create, to kind of backtrack. And if we wanted to pursue not having marijuana in town, and nobody really wanted to pursue that. And so what worries me about this proposal is now we're trying to kind of do that very same thing with zoning. So yes, the existing businesses will be pre-existing non-conforming, but it really changes the landscape. And I wonder if it also will lead to the commodification of the existing permits. I know that they're written in such a way that it's only the existing owners, but I still, part of at least how this was sold around the state is that this, you may being the big may, get a mom and pop business doing this, but I wonder if in this town, this will contribute to that not possibly happening. And so, I mean, I don't like pursuing things like this where we're going to zone something out. Now, I realize, yes, the existing permits and the existing businesses will be exempt from this, but I still have a difficult time with this.
Okay, thank you. I have a question, Michelle, with regard to numbers 8 and 9 under your proposed 7.18.5 regarding this setback for outdoor cultivation for non-home and home use. I'm curious how those numbers were developed.
It was through the Fulcrum project, we were shocked that the Fulcrum project was even being considered with residents so close to the project. One home was directly across the street from the project. So after discussion, again, remember, this is not my own decision, it's a group decision. It was decided 200 feet would be a safe measurement with regard from residences, such as like the homes up on Van Duzenville Road.
And the home cultivation?
The home cultivation, that was another, again, I think it was in the current bylaws, it was 50 feet, just general cultivation was 50 feet. So we left that for home cultivation.
Okay, and how would that even come to zoning jurisdiction, though? How would you envision that being?
We want commercial projects. We did not think it was fair for home cultivation to fall under the 200 feet, so we separated it out. And as a matter of fact, that was pointed out to us over the year-long wait to have our petition heard. Several people approached us, and most were comfortable with the 50 feet, but I also commented that it always can be modified on the town meeting floor.
Okay, I see Mr. Forbes has got his hand up again.
Apologies for coming in yet again,
No, that's fine.
Madam Chair. But thank you for taking the point. The clarification also here is we recognize there are a lot of people within the town of Great Barrington who wish to cultivate marijuana on their home plots in accordance with the rules that are already set out. And we felt that something like 50 feet was sensible, given the fact that obviously lots are different shapes and sizes, but that still allowed a lot of capability for people to cultivate the appropriate amount of marijuana on their home lands.
Yeah, I think that's probably problematic. I think there's lots of zones where 50 feet would not be able to be achieved. I think that's similar to our concern about all residential districts, because this board's talked extensively in the past about the fact that all our agricultural lands are in the R4 for the most part. And so big exclusionary statements are definitely problematic for me. So board members, Jonathan, do you have any comment, question?
Comments, yeah. First of all, since Michelle indicted me for writing a letter to the CBA in Egremont, let me just be clear that what was proposed near my house was in a residential zone. It was at the end of a cul-de-sac that's maybe a quarter mile long, that again is residentially zoned. And what they were proposing was to build a facility that was 135,000 square feet that would have full-time growing. 135,000 square feet is larger than all of Big Y Plaza. just to give you a sense of scale, which was my objection to this facility at the end of a residential subdivision road. And also, unlike Fulcrum, which was going to employ 4 people full time, or maybe it was 3, this applicant was proposing to employ, I think it was 70 full-time employees. So it's a completely different thing. Also, this is not an argument, Michelle. I'm giving you comments. So number 4, about no marijuana establishment in residential zones. If you look at the table of uses, with the exception of growing marijuana, which is by special permit, no marijuana establishment is already allowed in residential zones. So it's an end in all of those zones. So this is completely superfluous. And then as you go into the physical requirements, I find these criteria to be impossible to enforce and very subjective. So I don't think there is a rational way to judge any of these. It's because it's an emotional issue for a lot of people, and so it doesn't seem to me that it's really enforceable. And the 200 feet from any property line basically was there. It was originally, I think, 500 feet in the original proposal, but it basically would rule out Fulcrum because you need a huge lot to do that. And no one ever brings up the fact that Fulcrum was in an industrial zone, not a residential zone, even though it was a residential zone across the street. And the 50 feet on home cultivation would exclude most of the lots in town from anyone being able to grow marijuana outside. Even in the R1A, which is our largest non-rural residential district, those lots are only 100 feet wide, so you couldn't grow anything in R1A in a conforming lot. So to me, this doesn't make any sense.
I'm not sure why that is a bad thing. I'm not quite sure understanding that. And also, I don't think, let me go back a little bit. We are not, as was said earlier, opposed to marijuana facilities, anyone making money and making a profit. We just want them where they will not be impeding kids and people where they congregate. And Rebel is a dispensary, and it certainly isn't a residential neighborhood. There's a school bus stop there, which I guess we're discounting, but that was a problem for me. It's right across the street from the neighborhood. I know they have the windows, but some of this stuff speaks of morality. I know there's a law, but sometimes I think we got to put a little something else behind this. And the fact that I'm not sure if it's even the citizens' responsibility to find out where marijuana can grow. That's not our, in theory, did a fine job. They're not in town, and no one seems to be bothered by that. And that was probably the way we'd prefer it to be. And it seems to be a big uprising because we want them where they're not going to be a problem. They're not saying we don't want them, just saying let's put them somewhere where it's not a problem, like Theory.
But as Ed just pointed out, Theory wouldn't be allowed to open under this.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Garfield, is that, you know, this bylaw, if it was in place before any of these businesses put their applications through, then we, you know, would we have any?
No,
So. And
some people might be fine with that, and some people might not be fine with that. So I mean, I think this is where if this becomes a question of morality, then this isn't the place for that discussion.
No, but this is my point was, I mean, my earlier point was that, you know, is that I don't know if this is the path to take to, you know, to try to prevent marijuana cultivation. And so I know the statement that this isn't a marijuana sale or whatever. I know, they're making the statement that this isn't about that, but if effectively this is about that, then, anyway, that's my difficulty.
Okay. Do board members have any more questions or comments?
Yeah, I have two more.
Sure, go ahead, Malcolm.
I just have two more problems with the language of the bylaw under the physical requirements number 4, which basically says that no odor can be detected at the exterior of the marijuana establishment. I assume that means at the exterior of the building. That seems to be extreme to me. That doesn't speak to neighbors. It doesn't speak to residential. It doesn't speak to anything except we're going to prohibit marijuana if outside the building, even if you're in a 50-acre property, in the middle of a 50-acre property, if there's either noise or odor from the establishment, it'll be prohibited. And that to me is draconian. And on itself, that makes me oppose this bylaw. But I do believe, with all the other comments, that this is basically a backdoor way to prohibit, no matter what the proponents or the supporters of the bylaw state. If you read the language of the bylaw, it's clearly to prohibit. It goes far beyond what the CDC law says. It goes far beyond what we reduced from in the original bylaw, and adds other categories of places where children congregate and other things that end up essentially prohibiting marijuana in the town. And I'm opposed to that. But if the town meeting is in favor of it, that's fine. But let's call a spade and a heart a heart, and let's let the town vote on what it really is, which is a prohibition of marijuana in the town.
Anything
Randy,
else?
could I jump in for a second?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
First of all, I have a question for Chris, because even though we have 4 stores that are currently open, I believe there are 2 others that are in the pipeline that have host community agreements. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I know that if you file for a building permit, that you are exempt from zoning changes. Does having a host community agreement or filing with the state provide any protection from zoning changes?
No, your rights are vested only if a building permit or special permit is issued, not applied, issued.
Right. So we have people here who are in the process of spending, I don't know what, close to $1 million in this application process that would be exempted, that would be prohibited from proceeding. The other thing is, I just wanted to point out that virtually all of the physical requirements and the language of all these physical requirements relates really only to the issues that came up with Fulcrum, which was a growing facility. I am unaware of anyone ever having any noise or smell or light or any other kind of issues with a medical or a marijuana dispensary. And yet they're applying all of these criteria to something that doesn't need it. These are all coming out of Fulcrum. But they're applying it to the whole trade, which is crazy. It is a prohibition.
Chair, may I make a comment?
I was just going to say, go ahead, Ms. LeBaire. And I see Mr. Forbes also has his hand up.
It's easy to see that Mr. Haken holds a lot of bitterness over the Fulcrum issue. Our experience with the marijuana industry, of course, was from Fulcrum. But I got to be honest with you, I've had a lot of conversations with people from Sandusfield. and who have spoke to me about it, and they have concerns too. It's not about us. It's not about Fulcrum. People in Sheffield I've had conversations with. It's not about us. It's not about Fulcrum. I've had conversations with people, Lee and Lennox. It's not about us. It's not about Fulcrum, Jonathan. There's a lot of conversations going on about this. And again, if you bother to study the bylaws of neighboring communities, you would see a lot of what's in this bylaw amendment, and that's what it is, an amendment, has been pulled for some of the best of those communities who are more resident-centric than Great Barrington, in my opinion. And that's my opinion alone. With regard to residential zones, it's not about just residential zones, it's about residential areas as well. An example of that is up in Van Duzenville, where poor planning 30, 40 years ago resulted in what you're seeing, a light industrial area plopped in the middle of a residential area that was once all farming community. I know because I grew up here. I know because my parents grew up here. So it isn't just about residential districts or residential zones, it's about residential areas as well. And I guess with Mr. Hankins, size matters. So I guess it depends, your rights are tied to the size of whatever facility is going in, or your rights to enjoyment of property. But I highly recommend, we went through this once already, March 2020, and the planning board didn't recommend it. But let's bring it to annual town meeting, and maybe we'll get an opportunity to present this time and let the voters decide. And also, I've sat in many of your meetings for hours when some of the best have constructed bylaws only to sit for hours going over those bylaws and making corrections, making changes, bringing amendments to a town meeting floor. So with all of your resources, this planning board is constantly reviewing and constantly amending its own bylaws. So let's be fair to a group of citizens, and let's just bring it to town meeting floor and let the citizens decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Forbes, was there something you wanted to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I do have some issues with the way that this has been discussed. Firstly, with Jonathan's point, that's exactly why you have regulations, right, and bylaws, to ensure that basically people stay within those. So you don't have odor, you don't have noise. So what you're arguing there is why have any bylaws at all? I mean, it doesn't make everything superfluous by taking your comments to its ultimate conclusion. In the case of Malcolm's comments, they really worry me intensely, because what Malcolm is doing is calling into question the very nature of the master plan. So basically, absolutely, Malcolm, if we allow any odor or any noise, which is what you were talking about, because some of these places could actually produce those, and it shouldn't matter, that is against the sense of the master plan. So is this really what the planning board is all about? Trying to go against the tone and the nature and the spirit of the master plan?
So I appreciate your opinion, but I'm not going to turn this into people making comments about other people. Let's keep focused on the bylaw. Do you have anything else that you wanted to say about the bylaw that's being proposed and rationale behind it?
Those are the 2 points I was going to make. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Go ahead,
So Ms. Forbes has got her hand up, and then I'll come to you, Garfield.
Sure, thank you.
Ms. Forbes?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. The bylaw was originally 500 feet, and it was changed to help get the marijuana industry in place in our neighborhood. So bringing it back to 500 is what it should be, because that's what the CCC recommends and the state of Massachusetts recommends. So honestly, I don't see a big deal about switching it to 500 feet. It's mainly to help protect against cultivation. which is a real hindrance, as Sandersfield, Sheffield, and all the other towns out there. And Jonathan, you know this because of Egremont. Who wants it in their backyard? We don't. We don't want cultivation. We have 7 permits for 7 stores. That's great. That's fine. That should be enough revenue for the whole town of Great Barrington. But to have a cultivation hinder the quality of life for all of us is what we're against. That's what this 500-foot rule is really for, helping us keep the cultivation out of everyone's backyard. Everyone's, not just ours, but everyone's. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So as to the 500 feet, so as with a lot of our zoning bylaws, this board often starts with a model bylaw that is provided by the state, and that was the case in this instance. And then what we're entitled to do is review those bylaws for applicability within our community and make adjustments as may be appropriate. And so that's how we got to 200. And then we took that to town meeting with an explanation, just as the citizens petition is now proposed to make some amendments. So in my mind, you know, it's a process and we need to let the process go through its course. I want to thank the citizens for the energy in putting this together. I do want, though, to just take a moment to recognize that, as you yourselves have pointed out, there is a special permit process. And, you know, I think if we look around and are honest with ourselves, that process is doing what it's meant to do. It's creating opportunities for people to ask questions about applications. This board or the select board have opportunities then to ask for more information from applicants. And so that is the process. And I think that special permit process is showing that it does work. So, you know, I think adding some of these items maybe adds some opportunity for there to be contradiction between an already existing special permit process, which can create some challenges for us legally even. You know, I'm not going to be voting to send a positive recommendation to town meeting on this particular application, because I do think it just creates a conflict in our existing process. And as I'm seeing it, our existing process appears to be working. So does anybody else have any comments from the board member standpoint? Because I'd like to move us forward.
I have some comments. I'm wondering what's wrong with it if it doesn't happen. What I want to actually ask you is why are we so gung-ho on having 7 marijuana shops? But if someone mentions putting in a store that might be helpful to all, everyone freaks, oh, we're going to have a big box. Oh, but wow, yeah. And then people get nervous about a big box company, but they don't seem to mind having 7 marijuana shops. And if we're going to put one on Railroad Street, it's just going to exacerbate the problem with everyone says there's no parking. So we'll have a bunch of stoners taking up all the parking, and people that have a family won't have any place to park. And this seems to be a big problem in this town, that everybody seems to be going overboard with is parking. So if we're going to let one on that street, you know there's not going to be any parking.
I'm not going to mix parking issues with this issue, Garfield.
That's okay. I'm just telling you. I have a right to my opinion.
Absolutely, you do. Absolutely. Nobody's trying to stop you from speaking. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Not at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anybody else, gentlemen? Jeremy, you've got your hand up. Sorry, you have a yellow wall behind you, and that hand just sort of disappears into the yellow wall.
Sorry. Yeah, so just with the table of use regulations. So, I mean, if the applicants behind this bylaw proposal, so cultivation is a different use line than retail establishments, and then so there's 3 different lines: retail, cultivation, and manufacturing. And so, there's nothing to say that the buffers that are being created have to be all three. So that's one comment. And then I just clarification. It didn't seem like it, but the one of the applicants wasn't, drafters wasn't soliciting the planning board to propose their own floor amendments, or I'm sorry, town meeting floor amendments to this proposal, were they?
I think if amendments are going to be proposed, that would have to happen at town meeting, because we've got to have this hearing on the amendment as proposed, or as proposed now. Yeah. So.
No, I understand that, but were they asking us to propose our own amendments to it on the town floor, or were they just saying to let the process happen where citizens propose amendments on the meeting floor?
If I understood Ms. LeBaron correctly, I think she was letting other people know that it could be amended on town floor.
It's, if I may, Chair, it's just a
briefly
procedural thing that anything on town meeting floor can be a motion to amend.
Mm-hmm.
So just a general comment, that's all.
Yep. Okay. I see Doug Stevenson's hand up. Doug, did you have something about this particular item that you wanted to comment on? And then I'm gonna close things up here.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little concerned that that Jonathan at least has in his mind that this is strictly a fight against fulcrum, and it's not.
Mr. Stevenson, we're not going to get into particulars. No. Do you have a comment or question, not about a board member, but about this amendment?
If you let me speak, I do, Brandy. I know I have been in contact with multiple people in multiple states that have been dealing with this marijuana issue for multiple years. I've talked to people in Colorado. I've talked to people in Oregon. I've talked to people in Missouri. I've talked to people all over the country. And universally, the feedback I've gotten is that 200 feet is just not far enough for a setback. And that's what the research shows. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, even through the Cannabis Control Commission, recommends a setback of more than 200 feet. If everybody is telling us that, I've got to believe that everybody can't be wrong. It can't be everybody is saying 500 feet is the right number, and Great Barrington is right at 200 feet. They can't all know something, and we know better. I know that there's a pride of authorship here, but we really need to get over the pride of authorship here and start listening to other people. And I really think you all need to get over the pride of authorship here and start listening to people that have been through this. And you need to look to other people to get their experience and learn through other people's mistakes rather than making your own mistakes with this. I know that, we could put a 6,000 foot limitation on it and put that in the table of uses, and the Board of Selectmen can do whatever they want with a special permit. They've done that already with the one that's going to be where McClellan Jewelers is. I mean, the table of uses says that has to be 200 feet from a school, and that's not going to be 200 feet from a school. They look the other way there. God only knows how they granted a special permit on that, but they did. So, you need to get over the pride of authorship on this. So that's my comment.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so seeing no more comments on citizens petition number 1, we will move on to citizens petition number 2 to amend the table of use regulations to allow marijuana establishments by special permit in the I2 zone. Do we have any representatives for this petition? Chris?
B2.
I'm sorry, it's, did I say B2?
No,
I apologize.
You were absolutely right. I had no-
Oh, okay, I2 zone.
I hope there is somebody here to speak on this. They were informed of the hearing. If somebody's in the audience, there are 22 folks in the audience, by the way. If somebody's there to speak on this proposal for manufacturing in the I2 zone, please raise your hand.
I'm not seeing any hands. Let me just make sure I'm seeing everyone here.
You see an indicator at the top, so I don't see any, Brandy. You can always come back to it. You want to move on?
Sure. So we'll move on to citizens petition number 3 to amend the zoning map in section 9.11 to rezone portions of the MXD district to an R3 district. Do we have any representative of this petition here? Mr. Kernan?
Yes, Ms. Chairperson. I am Mike Kernan of 12 Mahawi Street. Give a signal that you can hear me this time.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. That will be important. I submitted this citizens petition, now number 3, to the town clerk on January 31st, 2020. My purpose here today is to persuade this planning board to issue a positive recommendation. That will be a daunting task as the board voted 5-0 against this proposal last March. But I find hope as this board does change its mind at times. As an example, in 2019, the planning board voted 5-0 to support its own density requirement in our MXD zone. It is the only residential zone in town with no density requirement. It passed at the ATM. However, a developer harped on a procedural error, and the Attorney General rejected the voters' decision and overruled the positive vote. Interestingly, the town did not contest the developer's objection to the vote. It acquiesced. We asked, meaning neighbors, asked the planning board to resubmit the exact same language in 2020. The planning board refused to do so. Nay, they did not even respond to us. We were compelled to file a citizen petition, which the planning board rejected by a score of 4-1. The planning board failed to follow its own prior vote, but at least one member has a conscience. At the ATM in 2020, with limited attendance, save many town employees, the same proposal was rejected. Here today, I have a companion proposal, which was also submitted in January 2020. The Mahawi Triangle was formerly a B2 zone until it was changed in 2016. We can only wonder at the reasoning. The bylaw language was complex and about 8 pages long. I was told that one current select board member declared that his different neighborhood dodged a bullet with the same kind of language. This complex legalese type language is eerily similar in its complexity to that presented for the nursing home last September. Difficult to read and probably drafted by some expert. The Mahawi Triangle is a small neighborhood of mostly 1- and 2-family homes. It is peculiarly carved out of Pope, Mahawi, and Manville streets, as well as a stretch of homes along Main Street. There are a few professional offices located in homes, such as attorneys, architects, chiropractors, and the like. This neighborhood does not meet the current requirements of its former zone B2, such as a minimum lot requirement of 1 acre. No residential property in this area does. The B2 requires a front setback of 50 feet, none do. The R3 has a lot requirement of 5,000 square feet and a front setback of 25 feet. I measured the front setbacks as being around 30 feet, and it appears that every house has 5,000 square feet. My petition contains an analysis of the neighborhood as being primarily residential, as well as a chart comparing the dimensional requirements of the R2, the B2, and the MXD zones, copying the information as contained in zoning bylaw section 4.1.2. The R3 is the best residential zone for the Mahawi Triangle. On or about December 2019, the board discussed extending the MXD zone to include the properties along Maple Avenue, from the railroad tracks to Silver Street. It was put on pause. We would rather stop this MXD from expanding or even existing. A contractor's yard is prohibited from all zones in this town, except for the 2 industrial zones by right and by a special permit in our residential MXD zone. The passage of this petition would in effect outlaw a future contractor's yard in our friendly residential area. An approval for a contractor's yard, which had been operating in violation of issued cease and desist orders but not enforced, was recently granted. However, this particular petition has been pending for over a year, making such approval of an unwanted contractor's yard legally questionable, as the publication of a zoning amendment is supposed to put all projects at bay. This petition was published in March 2020. For purposes of creating this MXD zone in 2016, the town joined together 2 drastically different neighborhoods. The residential Mahawi Triangle commingled with commercial parcels west of Maple Avenue and south of Manville Street. The area of map 22 on the strip west of Maple Avenue is commercial, and the area of map 22 south of Manville Street on both sides of Main Street is commercials. These parcels will remain in MXD with my proposal. This proposal separates the commercial from the residential. We recommend moving the Mahawi Triangle, consisting of the mostly residential parcels on Pope, Mahawi, and Manville Streets, along with 14 residential parcels along nearby Main Street, from the MXD zone to an R3 zone, a legal residential zone which more appropriately reflects the residential character of this neighborhood. I ask respectfully the planning board to approve this petition. Thank you for the time.
Mr. Kernan, may I ask, has your petition changed materially from what was presented at town, what was prepared for town meeting last year?
No, not at all. Not one word.
Okay, I just was curious if there were any amendments. Okay, so members of the public, if you have any questions or comments regarding this petition, if you could please raise your hand and we'll recognize you. I see Ms. Luberes. Ms. Luberes, I believe you can speak.
Yep, I got it. Michelle Luberes, 70 Division Street. If I understand Mr. Kiernan correctly, this was, and I recall it, this was approved by the voters once already. And so from what I understand, no, it wasn't. I thought it was the AG's office.
The other proposal was the one to impose density requirements. We prepared 2 at the same time.
Okay, all right. I got confused between the 2. Thank you.
Ms. Matz?
Yes, good evening. Barbara Matz, 22 Mahawi Street. And I would just like to speak briefly in support of Mr. Kernan's petition. For as long as I can remember, I've never really had to question any new projects in our neighborhood, trusting that compliance with the town's regulations and respect for our neighborhood structure would serve everyone's interests. Meanwhile, the town has modeled a number of strategies to guide Great Barrington's forward development, including a master plan and an open space and recreational plan, both of which call for preserving a balance between development needs and community environmental concerns. It feels like the changes in designation to our area a few years ago to an MXD zone, after years and years of being a B2 commercial zone, just opened up a Pandora's box for changes that don't represent or reflect our neighborhood. A neighborhood that for all of the 26 years that I've lived here have fundamentally, a neighborhood that has fundamentally stayed the same, a balance of 1, 2, and multifamily homes, professional offices, some small retail establishments, and this includes construct, and this also with a balance of a good amount of green space. I believe that pulling back our MXD zone to an R3 district will allow for needed future development and growth in a way that would ensure a balance that would honor our master plan while serving our community needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for the petitioner from the public? If you do, please raise your hand and we will recognize you. All right, seeing no hands raised, do any of the board members have any comments or questions? Jeremy?
Sorry. Yeah, so I mean, I do have a little concern with this going to, or these parcels going to R3. Specifically, and look, this is the table of use, the table of use regulations. So live work units in R3 is a no, and mixed use in R3 is a no. And I mean, there's a few others too that I'm would be concerned with changing it from MXD to, and then also maybe I wonder with the 3 to 8 units being a special permit in that area. Yeah, I mean those would be my main concerns with going with changing these lots, basically streets, to an R3.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Malcolm, anything for you? No? Jonathan, anything for you?
No, I think it's a bad idea. It doesn't,
Pedro?
it doesn't, it's not in keeping with the history of the development there, and it's not in keeping with what's there now.
It would create a lot of potential conflicts for existing buildings. Pedro, anything for you?
No, I mean, I think that the neighbors' complaint is that we allow mixed use there because everything else was either allowed before or by special permit. So this is really a problem of mixed use. And from what I can tell and what I observe in the neighborhood, mixed use is dotted throughout already. I believe I wasn't here when the MXD was put through, but I think that in the board study of this area, that's one of the things that was determined, that mixed use is basically there already. So.
That is correct. And we did do a lot of on the ground walking and looking at individual parcels to see what uses were present and whether or not you could fairly parse off the residential areas. But with the amount of mixed use on Mahawi Street, you can't really split out Manville by itself or a portion of Pope by itself. I mean, you've got the inn, you've got commercial offices, you've got wards, you've got multifamily housing of several different styles, you've got single family housing. So really it lended itself to the mixed use designation. And that was the evaluation that this board did at that time. Garfield, I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's all right. I'm okay. Thank you for asking. I'm all right.
Okay. Jonathan, did you have one more?
Yeah, I have a quick question for Chris, and I don't know whether it's just an omission in what was scanned or not, but what I'm seeing in what you provided us, there are only 5 signatures. Is there a missing signature page that we're not getting?
Yeah, you didn't. It was a certified submittal last year, so it's a legitimate submittal. I don't know how many signatures there were, but I'm sorry you didn't get every signature page.
Okay, but you need at least 10.
Yes, the petition had at least 10.
Okay, all right.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Kernan, I see you have your hand raised. I see Ms. Matz has her hand raised. So, Mr. Kernan, you want to go first?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. A few things. Ward's Nursery is not part of my proposal. My proposal takes the residential houses in the 3 blocks of Pope, Mahawi, and Manville, along with the 14 houses along Maple Avenue, and leaves the rest in the MXD. 2, the MXD is a mix, in a way, of residential and commercial, except the inside part, which I call the Mahawi Triangle, is mostly residential, except for construct, and now a contractor's yard, and the house on on Main Street there, Chris's place. Everything else is residential, and there are some offices here, some attorneys' offices and stuff like that, and they are grandfathered in, and they would be allowed in any type of R3 district. We want to keep out the commercial use of this. The commercial is on the outskirts. It's at the head of the triangle by Trotta's liquor store, which strangely was not included in the MXD in 2016. Nor was the police station or the health building right next to it. Nor was the nursing home. Okay, so we have a residential area stuck, bordered by some commercial big aspects on the outside. To say it's a mix is incorrect. To say they're adjoining, that would be more correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Matz?
Sorry, I didn't.
Did you have a comment?
Yes, sorry. I thought I was muted. Sorry. I just have a question about a technical question about what kind of housing. We've always had multifamily housing here, and as I understood it, the R3 would also allow for multifamily housing. Is that so? I mean, what? Because I think that this is something that's always been an asset to this neighborhood. Are there limitations, or are you saying that there isn't multifamily housing allowed?
Multifamily of 8 units is allowed by right in the MXD.
Okay.
And above that is allowed by special permit. In the R3, both of those multifamily criteria would be by special permit.
So 3 units and up by special permit.
3 units up, or 8 units and up?
In R3, 3 units and up by special permit. In MXD, over 8 units.
Okay, all right.
And then they also with professional offices. So in R3, it's by special permit. So it is allowed, but it does take a special permit. And in MXD, it's by right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Board members, any other comments? Okay. Mr. Kernan, is your hand up from last time and you just haven't put it down, or did you have some additional statement?
Oh, I thought I lowered it.
Okay, great. Okay, so if there are no more comments, we will move on to the next item, which is the planning board proposal to amend the downtown business mixed-use B3 district. And Chris, are you able to give a summary there?
Sure. The planning board started to discuss this proposed amendment, at least back in the summer, if not before, the summer of 2020. And is first of all, the downtown mixed-use B3 zone covers the area of Bridge Street east of School Street. So it would include the old Searles Bryant campus. And then across the river, moving eastwards, it includes the old New England log home site, a few homes and offices on Bridge Street just before you get to Humphrey. And it also includes a portion of the old Dolby florist site on Humphrey Street, Mahawi Tent, as well as several properties on Church Street back on the west side of the river. So this is an area that before it was B3 was an industrial zone. There was a good bit of industry there. As you know, I mentioned the log home site. It was changed to the B3 zone in order to facilitate and stimulate the development of what were 2 large abandoned sites at the time when this was passed in 2007, the Searles Bryant site and the log homes property, both on Bridge Street. The B3 zone was very well intentioned, very well researched and studied, aspirational in nature, we believe. But in fact, the B3 zone really has not been used, has not served its primary purpose. The regulations now, as they exist in the zoning bylaw, are a set of design controls as well as open space and affordable housing bonus provisions, where if you have more of one, you can have more density, et cetera. And fairly onerous parking requirements in the B3 zone, all wrapped into a special permit process, which is fairly complicated and difficult even for me to read through and guide an applicant through. The B3, as I mentioned, also covers several lots on Church Street as well as School Street, none of which are really large enough to lend themselves to a sort of transformative development that the B3 was designed to encourage. And unfortunately, the B3 could be used in a way to assemble several lots and then demolish the existing buildings on those sites. I should also mention that B3 covers the site that is known as the laundromat. That was the site at the center of a special permit process last year. And before that, during that process, which was an applicant was looking to tear down that laundromat and put in a parking lot, this board went through some calculations to see what actually could be built on the laundromat lot. And given the parking requirements, given the density requirements, and trying to wade through the bonus provisions, it was actually difficult to see whether more than 5 or 6 units could be built there. And 5 or 6 units, given current construction costs, just would never pan out. So in other words, the B3 was so restrictive as to, in a sense, cancel any possible redevelopment of that site. So 15 years since the passage of this B3 zone, here we are. Both of the key campus sites have been partially developed. Permits are in place that would enable more to be completed there. Bryant School was saved and reused. Searles is permitted to be saved and reused. Affordable housing was built and will be occupied by the time we get to town meeting, I believe. Riverfront open space has been preserved for public enjoyment on both sides of the river. And so this is all forward progress in the B3 zone, but it has come not because of the B3 zone, but despite them. The planning board proposes these regulations to update and proposes the amendments to update the regulations and to clarify the purpose of the zone and streamline the development process. So we can go through the red line, Brandy, if you'd like, or we can take questions on the proposal.
It's been a while, so maybe a quick review of the red line. I don't think we necessarily need to go line by line.
Okay. I trust you all have this in front of you.
Yep.
The first section of existing 9.4 of the zoning bylaw is the purpose section. It's a little bit rambling as it is written now, and this board went through the purpose section with a sharp red pen and has deleted a good bit of the language that used to discuss how the B3 should sit in between residential and commercial areas. So the proposal here simplifies the purpose statement, and I think clarifies it, that the B3 here is to assist in revitalizing these larger tracts of land to allow for a mix of uses and provide for a variety of housing and business opportunities here. It goes on to clarify the 5 purpose statements that are in the existing bylaw by revising item 3 and striking item 5. So there would be 4 points under section 9.4.1. So the B3 location, which is 9.4.2, I've discussed the location of the B3. There are no changes to zoning map or the location of the B3. The definition section, which applies specifically to the B3, is proposed to be struck. The definitions are either no longer relevant with these particular proposed amendments, or they're incorporated elsewhere. 9.4.3 now was 9.4.4 is permitted uses. And this looks to simplify the permitted uses and clearly state what is possible in a mixed use scenario. So offices, retail stores, general services, bakeries, etc. This is a list that the planning board has used before. We've discussed it. It's incorporated, for example, in your smart growth zoning regulations. The dimensional requirements simply refer you back to the dimensional table. The important change here is the deletion of the density controls. And this is what I was referring to when I was talking about the old laundromat site on School Street. The requirement that you needed 2,500 square feet of land per dwelling unit, or in some cases 5,000 square feet, actually prohibits redevelopment on some of these sites. So that requirement is proposed to be struck. The open space requirement is proposed to be struck. I mentioned already there is open space in the zone. So that purpose has really been met already. The parking requirements in old section 9.4.7, proposed section 9.4.5, are also proposed to be significantly amended. And this takes its cue from the parking language that we've used before in the mixed use zones like the B2X or the MXD. So if you, excuse me, have a residential dwelling unit, only one parking space is required, whether it's residential only or a mixed use building. I believe the old requirement that we propose to eliminate is 2 spaces per residential unit. And then it goes on to calculate the required amount of parking spaces in mixed use developments. A site plan review section is proposed to be amended to say that all redevelopment and development is subject to site plan review. Previously, only development in excess of 10,000 square feet was subject to site plan review. So that's proposed in order to give the board some control over what's going on, which a town did not previously have. The special permit section required a special permit for really quite a lot of activity that we have seen in this zone would have required a special permit. Certainly anything in excess of 20,000 square feet of gross floor area. And then if you were using any sort of incentives for the open space or the density incentives, you would have had to go through the special permit process. And as this board has said many times before, a special permit process is long, unpredictable, and it's not a guaranteed yes. And so in a zone where the intention is actually to stimulate redevelopment and mixed use of parcels, to have a special permit on the very thing for which you hope to be developed in the area will squash that development. The development incentive section is proposed to be struck entirely. As we've said here before, it's actually quite confusing to read. And now that the larger sites are developed, or at least spoken for, they really are no longer applicable. They're probably impossible to use on small sites. And so this proposal will strike those incentives. The affordable housing section, this is an inclusionary zoning section. And what that means is for every certain type of development, a certain number of affordable housing units were required. That was, I believe, intended for the redevelopment of either the Searle School or the log home site, where if there was a large residential development, affordable housing would be mixed into it. A wonderful goal. As we know, the Searle School is already permitted for a different use, and there is already affordable housing built in this zone. And the board has talked about actually taking the affordable housing requirements out of this section and actually applying them to the entire town. Now, we haven't had that discussion yet, maybe next year, but we're sort of poking around the edges of that discussion, but we haven't crafted a workable bylaw quite yet on affordable housing. But in any case, the proposal here is to strike it from the B3 zone. Again, as it's really already been met, and or in some developments has been avoided entirely. For example, the Dolby redevelopment was deliberately scaled so it would not trigger the affordable housing requirement. So all of the strike-throughs on the next page are related to the affordable housing requirements. And that's it for the text. In the table of use regulations, there's a few proposed changes. Excuse me. In the B3 column, in the table of use regulations, assisted living residence, which is allowed only by planning board special permit now, would be allowed by right in the B3. That's assisted living. Mixed use, again, remember this is a mixed use zone. It says so in the title. Mixed use now is special permit. The planning board proposes to make it by right. The publicly financed age-restricted housing would be by right. On the next page, commercial amusements and fairgrounds could be allowed by special permit. Right now, it's a no. So that just opens up possible flexibility of use. And I believe those were the only changes to the table of use regulations, if I remember.
Pools.
There's
Another
family daycare.
with family daycare, which, by the way, if you look, is struck out. So if you plan on using this to send over to the select board, you might want to strike it in.
Thanks, Pedro. The proposal right now, it says it's special family daycare, a special permit from the select board. The proposal is to make it allowed by right.
And then also pools.
The swimming pools, which are allowed only by special permit now, would be allowed by right. So that's a quick summary, and we can get into details or questions, Brandy.
Okay, so we'll open it up to questions from the public. Please raise your hand if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, edits. Yes, Eve, if you could give your name and address. If you just unmute, you should be able to give your comment. Eve, if you're able to unmute yourself. There we go. Okay, I was just gonna give some direction.
Okay. Good evening. It's nice to see everyone. And I can appreciate some of the finer aspects of this proposed change in terms of the, parking permits and so forth. Please keep in mind that Church Street, School Street, and parts of Bridge Street are historic neighborhoods which are very precious to the character and attraction of Great Barrington, and is bordered by my neighborhood, River, Dresser, Pleasant Court, Pleasant Street, and Dresser, which are also historic and racially diverse neighborhoods that would be in the best interest of Great Barrington to preserve. Some of the concerns that I have include the 10,000 square foot, no special permit required. As someone brought up earlier, numerous parcels could be purchased, destroyed, and have 10,000 foot warehouses, business, all the included appropriate uses for the proposed chain, which would be devastating to the character and the lifestyle and the sense of residential enjoyment. Also, if you think that, if you take a look at School Street and Church Street, are very narrow streets, and with parking on one side of the street, if you had a business there, one car has to pull over to the side of the road with parking on one street for the other car to pass. In other words, two cars cannot really pass comfortably with parking on the side of the road. So I think that if you want to talk about Bridge Street with some of these changes, that's one conversation. But when you encroach on established neighborhoods that are hundreds of years old and provide so much to the Great Barrington community, it's difficult. It's a really difficult proposal from that perspective. And there's nothing here to say that if the Searles School Hotel proposal somehow isn't built, or even if it is built, that he can't turn around and sell it to someone who's going to raise it and put in an enormous 10,000 square foot alternative building there. So if you look at what's here now and you imagine what could happen in the future, and then ask yourself, is it really an improvement? And what does it offer the community that's any better, really, than what exists? That's a valuable question to ask. Because if you change the entire look, functioning, and feel of downtown Great Barrington, it's why people come here. It's why people come here. And that's my input into this issue. It's not a main street. It's not Route 7. School and church are very small streets, very residential. So I would ask the committee to consider this perspective and take a good hard look at what the benefit and the losses would be to the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Eve, could you just for our record give your full name and address? We didn't catch that at the outset.
Eve Schatz, 4 Pleasant Court. So I'm in the butter to Church Street, and which is very close to School Street, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else have any comments or questions from the public? Mr. Kernan?
Yes, hello. Hi there. I have a question about whether there is a density requirement in this new MXD.
This is not an MXD, this is a B3.
I'm sorry, a B3, but it's a mixed use. Is there a density requirement?
Mixed use is permitted, it's not all mixed use.
There is not a density requirement proposed.
So it would be similar to our MXD in that regard, which has no density requirement per housing unit.
Correct. There's an existing one now that the amendment proposes to remove it.
Well, I would urge all voters to vote against it for that reason. I also want to comment on Eve Schatz is talking about parking, traffic, the narrowness of the street, the density, the possibility of someone coming in and building a large building, the attractive views of Great Barrington and what has made Great Barrington great and how residential it is. These are the same factors that Barbara Matz and I have been talking about for 2 or 3 years. Great Barrington is important to us. It was one time recognized as the best small town in America. I doubt that today. Maple trees are just being torn down, even ones that are live.
Mr. Kernan,
Yes.
do you have a comment about this particular item? I don't want to go off on a tangent about things that you're unhappy about. If you have a comment about our proposal, I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you. I went too far in that, Ms. Chairperson, and I appreciate your interrupting me. I just talked about the same things that Eve Schatz talked about, and I asked about the density, and that was answered. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, this is a challenging space, and we've spent a lot of time trying to understand where it was at the time in 2007, where it is now. I think we need to just clarify, Chris, we're not removing an ability to review any development of 10,000 square feet. We're actually saying all redevelopment is subject to site plan review, so that there is some involvement for proposals for developing within the B3.
Right. So right now in the B3, only developments over 10,000 square feet require site plan review. The planning board proposes to make all redevelopment in the B3 subject to site plan review, no matter how small.
So that's more oversight, not less.
Correct. Simultaneously, right now there's a special permit requirement for anything 20,000 square feet or more. The planning board is proposing to remove that and simply let the table of use regulations speak for itself. So if there's a special permit required for a particular use, of course, there'd be a special permit required. But no longer is there a size threshold on the development for special permit requirement.
Brandy, I'd like to clarify something as well.
Yes, please, Pedro.
So Mr. Kernan is right to say that there is no density requirement for mixed use, but there is a density requirement for multifamily developments, 2,500 square feet per lot area. So there are some density restrictions with certain types of development.
Thank you for clarifying that. All right, do we have any other comments from the public? All right, hearing none, do we have any comments or questions from the board members? Jeremy and Malcolm.
So we did have a lot of discussions about Church Street when we were walking this and when we were going over this, and so Church Street it is different than at least the other parallel streets, not Bridge Street, but north, that there are businesses on it. And I think we're talking right now, there's, is it two completely residentials, I guess 2 plus 2. So Jane Iredale has 2 of them. And then there's 2 other residentials there. There is I guess it's a professional office and then a business, well, not counting Bryant. And so that, and then School Street right now is business if besides Jane's house on the corner. And then the houses that we're talking about on Bridge Street, right now there's one business with, I think it has an apartment, and then 3 residential, I think 2 occupied residentials and 1 permitted residential on Bridge Street. And so I think like the character of this, I mean, it is really mixed as it sits now. So we're not really introducing things so much. The house that borders the church property on Church Street was newly renovated as well. And so I don't know if there's really going to be a buying up and a tearing down and grouping together to build something huge there. So and also the of the residential properties, I don't know if that same thing is really going to happen as well. when sitting right across the street, there's an empty lot that someone could build something on now. So I don't know if I don't know if that's really a possibility. Also, bylaws in general are not preventing a property owner from tearing down the structures on their properties. That's very difficult to control. And zoning in general, if you're trying to zone something for exactly what you want, we've had many discussions about this, you really get no redevelopment. It's really hard to hit the needle on the head. You have to make zoning open enough that somebody's going to want to come in and do some redevelopment. If we just zone very narrowly, specifically for exactly what we want, it's very unlikely we'll ever get it. And then luckily we have a permitted project for Searles, and hopefully that'll happen in the near future. I mean, really, the building is, if it were to go on without something happening to it, it really is going to move beyond being a nuisance into being a danger to the public. And so I'm really weary of zoning that is so restrictive that we are likely to get no redevelopment.
Thank you.
Randy, if I may.
Malcolm had his hand raised.
Yeah.
Can I come to you next?
I am strongly opposed to the one-car parking. That is way below what standard is for housing, and I am, if the purpose of granting parking restrictions is to provide incentive for housing, I think that's a bad trade-off. I think we need more housing. We need to provide incentives for housing, but we can't do it at the price of creating a parking problem for the town. And as was stated by the speaker earlier, off-street or on-street parking in those areas outside of Bridge Street itself is a problem. So creating parking restrictions of one parking space per unit is likely to create a parking problem, if not in the short term, in the long term. So I am strongly opposed to that, and that would make me opposed to what I think is otherwise a good bylaw.
Thanks for that, Malcolm. I just want to clarify, because I think, Chris, you may have said that the parking requirement was being reduced from 2 parking spaces down to 1. But as I'm looking at the red line, as long as it's the current red line, it seems to show that it was 1 parking space for each dwelling unit, and it will remain 1 parking space for each dwelling unit. Is anyone else reading it that way?
That's correct. And I'm opposed to what it was before as well as to what it is now.
Okay. And so, Malcolm, you would like to see it be more. And I think
Yes.
Yeah.
I think 1.5 would be right. I'm looking at a study from the National Apartment Association that says the average nationwide per unit is 1.46 parking spaces per unit. For garden apartments, it's slightly higher because the cities obviously skew it down, so you don't need as many parking spaces. But I believe 1.5 is a conservative number, and I think we should go with 1.5 instead of 1.
Okay. Well, maybe we can come back and have a discussion on that. I wanted to start. Pedro, did you have? Wait, let Pedro go. He's next.
Well, I wanted to add to what Jeremy said, that sometimes if you don't make that you can create zoning that is basically too punitive for any development. And in fact, that's what we have with the B3 as it stands today. To Eve, I would just like to say that what we're trying to do here is to eliminate aspects of this zone that make it punitive to do any type of development. As it is right now, if we had a fire, or if somebody wanted to, build a multifamily development in an existing house, for example, it would be very difficult for them to do anything other than put a single family home in those lots. Now, some of you might think that that's fine, and I, in fact, think that that's fine as well, if that's what a building owner would, or a lot owner or a developer would like to do. But what we're trying to do is create a possibility so that people can build 3 units or 4 units on the lot. These lots that we're talking about are very, very small. Some of them might not even meet the 5,000 square foot lot requirement for a 2-family by right. So we're not trying to change the neighborhood here. We're just trying to make this part of the town be viable. The lot that Chris mentioned, which was the laundromat lot, I think he was being generous to say we can fit 6 units on there. As it is now, in my study, in my calculations, in my study of it, we can fit 3 units on there because of the parking and because of the open space requirement. So this is not a density, increaser by, exponential numbers. It literally is something that makes development not only easier for current homeowners, but for anybody, including a current homeowner, who would like to maybe make a 2-family or a 3-family structure out of their existing structure. So I don't believe that this is the type of thing that's going to change dramatically a neighborhood. Now, there are some things in the use table that I think I've brought up before that I think need to be changed, including the retail stores, both of under and above 20,000 square feet. I'm not sure why we're allowing that in the zone. And I'm also questioning again why we would want, given the lots that are remaining, and I'm including the school lots, why we would want a circus or a fairground use in this area. It kind of doesn't make any sense to me, but maybe we can discuss those things when we close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. I don't know that I got everything that you said written down because I was looking at the reg too, but we can come back to that. All right, let's see. Ms. Schatz, I see you've got your hand raised. Did you have an additional comment you wanted to make?
I do. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, B3 encouraged the development of the Searle School and Jane Ardale's beautiful renovation of her project. So it's really not all that limiting. But to put the 10,000 square foot bit of information in this proposal really leaves the door open for that kind of development there. So it's not so much that we don't think, whether we think something is going to happen, but what is it that we're creating that makes certain things permissible, whether we're thinking about it or not at this time. So, please consider those things. If you don't think 10,000 foot warehouse or business or whatever is going to be built there, amend it so it's not possible. But if it's in there, then it's possible, and some developer is going to come in and say it's consistent with zoning. Now, the laundromat in particular had multiple rentals in it, housing rental units in it. So that was already an existing use for that particular property. The laundromat was in front, behind it, and upstairs there were apartments that were rented. So again, my suggestion is that it does have the potential to dramatically change the character of the neighborhood. And we should think about what a developer is going to think when they read this, not what we imagine would happen. That is my point. So I hope that you will consider it. And if it's not something that you see or you want in there, change it. So it's not in there. So it's actually not in there.
Ms. Schatz, it seems you've spent a lot of time considering this, and I appreciate that. And oftentimes we are looking for people outside of this group to give rise to ideas or perspectives that we maybe have not considered. And so in the context of your question about, if there's something in there that we don't want in there, take that out. Was there something that you saw in looking at this proposed amendment that you said, well, I'm interpreting it, this way, that I could build X, and I don't like that given the fabric of my neighborhood? Is there a particular specific example you could maybe point us to?
Well, the 10,000 feet seems excessive, and I agree with Pedro about the circus and the fairgrounds. It does seem like this needs some review and editing before it's voted on, certainly. Can
we drill into that 10,000 square feet?
I think we need to clarify that for you, Eve. This is Chris. Currently, the B3 zone requires the planning board to review developments only if 10,000 square feet or larger. This board's proposal is to require planning board review of any development of any size. So the 10,000 square foot number you're catching there is a reference to something regarding what the planning board can and cannot review currently. So again, the planning board is proposing more site plan review oversight for development, not less.
Can I add something, Brandy?
Yes, please.
So, Eve, the way that a developer will go in and look at these lots is that they'll look at our lot coverage in the B3, and they'll look at their setbacks per lot, and they'll be able to determine how big their developments can be. We're not saying anywhere in here that, you can do a development anywhere that's up to 10,000 square feet. You have, if you have a lot that can accommodate that based on other criteria that's in our bylaw, right? So one of the things, I will say that one of the things that we're trying to do is to take away some restriction for that are currently limiting development based on requirements having to do with lot size. So in other words, that if you have a lot that's a certain size, right now you have to give a certain amount of it to parking and a certain amount of it to open space before you could even consider a development on the area that you're allowed to build. So we are eliminating the open space so that people can maybe build a little bit bigger. But that size of their development is still dependent on the size of their lot and how much
like any
the bylaw of any development and how much the bylaw allows them to build. So the lot coverage, just so you know, is by percentage in all these areas. The B3 is a big lot coverage. So you can build on 75% of your lot, but you could do that now. The only thing that we're allowing you to do is to maybe take out the portion of that buildable area that you would give to the open space. I hope that clears it up a little bit.
And the rationale behind that, some of the discussion we had about removing the open space component was that many of the lots are too small to even be buildable in any meaningful way if we require the open space. And there's been some public open space creation that has occurred in that area that can be made available to people.
Well, what proposals do you anticipate to take advantage of that, and what are they? Because there's a whole list of commercial uses that are proposed.
Well, we're not proposing any new commercial uses. These are all existing commercial uses. The only uses that we're proposing to change, I believe, are the assisted living residences, multi-use, publicly financed, age-restricted housing, the commercial amusements and fairgrounds, which we've already talked about. I'm opposed to that as well. And then the swimming pools. So there's the commercial uses were already there in the B3. That we didn't add any new commercial uses.
The hotels, motels.
Special permits.
Just how Searles was developed. And that was an existing part of the fabric of the bylaw that is remaining.
Well, it would be sad indeed if downtown became all hotels and motels. If beautiful residential neighborhoods.
Trust me, what we have been trying to do in this area in particular is to try to build more housing here. We want people to live in those areas. That is our ultimate goal. We don't have control over what happens there, but wouldn't it be nice to have a few extra people living in that area to make it more lively, have it more walkable? I think so.
Yes, absolutely, Pedro. I hear what you're saying, but if something's written a certain way, our intent for proposing zoning is open to interpretation, and then we get sued because it's allowed in zoning. So I think it needs more work. I think it needs review.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no more hands raised. Chris, was there anything else? I guess, do we need to go back to item number 2? Yes, how do we handle it in the context of no representative?
Well, let's see if anybody has joined us
Okay.
now to talk about the citizen proposal to, sorry, go ahead, Brandy.
Yeah, so is anyone present to speak on citizen petition number 2 to amend the table of use regulations to allow marijuana establishments by special permit in the I2 zone? Anybody from, I do see a hand raised.
Mike Gilmore.
Mr. Gilmore?
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. So what we're proposing is we would like to put it on, just change the zoning to a special permit. We're not actually trying to change the zoning. We're just trying to take it from a no to a, special permit.
Which is discretionary, as everyone knows. And, okay. So that is the crux of the petition. I'll ask if there are any questions from the public. If you have any questions about this proposal, please raise your hand. And this would be limited to the I2 zone. Just trying to grab my zoning map here. Are there any comments from the public? Please raise your hand. Seeing no comments from the public, and I'll keep an eye on that chat bar. Do we have any comments from board members?
Yeah, Brandy, could I jump in for a second?
Yes, please, Jonathan.
I just want to clarify that the I2 zone was formerly an I zone, and it was created to allow housing to be developed there and still keep the industrial uses. And so that was the purpose of the change for the I2 zone. So it is, in fact, an old industrial zone.
Right, right.
But it does have existing housing there.
The I2s, okay, so let's try and keep our comments narrow. We are not rezoning or changing uses in the I2 zone. We are considering a citizen's petition that would require marijuana establishments to go through a special permit process rather than being an N. So if we can just focus our comments in there.
So this, it's specifically manufacturing, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Thought I saw a hand pop up, but then it went down. Okay. Malcolm, anything for you?
No.
Jonathan, anything else for you?
No,
Pedro, anything for you?
nothing.
Garfield?
If you could just clarify for me, I don't have my map in front of me, but I feel would this be creating a possible leeway for a smaller scale fulcrum, which is not exciting to people?
It's just for the manufacturing or processing side. It's not for the growing. So Fulcrum proposed both cultivation, growing and processing. This proposal is just for the to possibly allow the processing only by special permit only.
So the
I'm
wording.
opposed to that.
Wait, Jeremy, let Garfield finish.
I'm just saying I'm opposed to that.
Okay. All right. Jeremy, did you have a question?
So I'm just the wording. It's in the petition. It says instead of marijuana establishment manufacturing, it says marijuana establishment and manufacturing. And the use table doesn't use that wording. It uses just marijuana establishment manufacturing or marijuana establishment cultivation or marijuana establishment retail and medical marijuana treatment center. So I wonder if the wording needs to be changed a little bit by petition.
I don't think we can do that at this
by
juncture. Yeah,
petition on the town meeting floor.
Chris is the expert.
Yeah, Jeremy, if the petitioner could work with the board to clarify the language, I think it's clear that the intent is just for the manufacturing use, and you've heard it stated. And the petition states that right now it says a no. They want to change it to so it's pretty clear that it's just manufacturing, but we can work to make sure it's clear on town meeting floor. So if it eventually passes, there's no confusion.
You could strike the end.
Correct.
Well,
We cannot, but the petitioner can on the floor.
I mean, I do.
You have a comment or a question? Because we're going to deliberate later.
Okay.
All right. So we've gotten through all 4 items here. So I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Moved.
Do we have a second? I think Jonathan was loudest and Jeremy is second. Okay, great. Thank you, gentlemen. So now we need a vote to recommend or not recommend the proposed amendments to town meeting. So we'll take these one.
Do we need to vote on closing the meeting?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't do the roll call. I apologize. Thank you, Malcolm. Getting ahead of myself here. So, Malcolm, how do you vote on the motion to close the hearing? Thank you. Jonathan.
Aye.
Pedro.
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Brandy. Aye. Okay. Moving on. So we've closed public hearing, and now we will review votes to recommend or not recommend amendments to town meeting, and we'll go petition by petition. So starting with petition number 1 to amend section 7.18 regulating marijuana establishments.
So we have to have a motion, right?
We need a motion, and we need a second, and then we'll have discussion.
So motion to send a positive recommendation of the public or petition to town meeting. Is that the right wording or is that not the right wording?
I don't know.
We'll work on it.
Yeah.
It depends what you want to say.
So you want to send a positive recommendation to town meeting for citizens petition number 1, Jeremy? Is that your motion?
Well, for the purpose of discussion, yes.
Well, you can, yes. Okay, so you can do that. You know, if you're feeling that you think it's something that should be sent with a positive recommendation, then by all means, that is definitely the motion to make. And if you do not think it should have positive recommendation, then you should make a different motion.
Well,
So it's whatever. Is that your motion?
Okay.
Just yes or no?
No, that is not my motion then. Then
Are you
for the
withdrawing your
purposes-
motion?
I'm withdrawing my motion, and I would like to submit another motion after my withdrawal to send a negative recommendation for the proposed bylaw to town meeting.
For purposes of discussion,
For
do we
the
have
purposes
a
of discussion.
second?
I'll second that.
Jonathan seconded for purposes of discussion. Okay.
Great.
So discussion. Do we have any discussion, gentlemen?
Yes.
Jeremy wants to discuss further? Sure.
So, as the bylaw is written, I'm not in favor of it. And I would, in its current form, I would vote no for this purpose, and then also at town meeting. But depending on how this bylaw is changed on the floor, that vote at town meeting may change.
Okay, thank you.
Specifically, I think I outlined it. I wonder if I would be in more support of it if they differentiated between the 3 categories of marijuana use. In and then also, and then also specifically thinking about where the petitioners feel that these uses are acceptable, and then trying to adjust the bylaw to make them able to be able for a I mean, they're all
For
special
use
permit.
at the, but to permit
For
the
an
use
application.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we understand that. Thank you. Malcolm, do you have any discussion?
I do think that this is a bylaw amendment that would prohibit marijuana establishments in the town, and I don't agree with that, and I would vote against.
Okay. Jonathan?
I echo Malcolm's sentiment.
Okay. Pedro?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this reads like a referendum on marijuana, so I'm even wondering why it's a zoning issue. I personally don't feel right giving a positive or a negative recommendation to it, because it seems to me like it is a referendum on marijuana. So, yeah, that's that.
Okay. Garfield?
Yes, thank you. I have a little issue because my feeling is I don't have a vote, but I stand behind it. So if I had one, I would say that I would give a positive recommendation. And I think money is money. If it comes from out of town, in the outskirts of town, it's the same colored greens if it came from in town. So I don't see where there's an issue that money is money. If we're looking to get money, we want this marijuana revenues, it can work just as well somewhere else as it can in town. I don't see why we're all freaked out about that. That's how I feel. Of course, I have no vote, but that's my feeling.
Well, appreciate you sharing your opinion. Okay. All right. So we have a motion to send a negative recommendation to town meeting. Do we have any further discussion on the matter?
Yeah, I want to echo Pedro's. It was much better said. It does, as written, seem like a referendum on marijuana, and then I agree that it doesn't belong in that form. It doesn't belong in zoning.
May I say one other thing, please?
Sure,
How
we're
many
discussing.
times do we have to tell you? I say we because I'm behind this. That it is not, and you don't want to seem to hear that. It's not. We're telling you it's not. Excuse me, Jeremy. I didn't interrupt you when you were speaking.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Garfield.
It is not a referendum on marijuana. We've already told you that 1,000 times. We have no problem with marijuana being sold in Great Barrington. Just want it in places where, like Perry, I know even now you're telling me you wouldn't have been able to, but that's the kind of thing we're looking for. Outskirts is fine. No one minds. I don't care if we make money. That's fine. It's not an issue. We're not opposed to marijuana. Not opposed to. How many times do we have to tell you that?
Well,
Garfield, you just said that marijuana could be sold easily somewhere else. So why are we all worried about it being sold in Great Barrington? That to me says that you don't want marijuana being sold in Great Barrington.
No, you misunderstood me, Pedro. I said outside the outskirts of town, i.e. E.G. Theory, which is on the outskirts of town, not out of town. So I did not. You misunderstood me.
Okay.
But Garfield, you said yourself, that you outside of downtown would be okay, but that's not the bylaw says.
That's not what it says.
I mean,
everywhere.
I respect what you're saying about your motives and everybody's motives. I mean, people say good things. I mean, about the children, about the locations, but taken as a whole, when you read through the terms of this bylaw, it prohibits marijuana establishments anywhere in town,
including the outskirts,
including Theory Wellness.
Including Theory Wellness.
I mean, that's why I'm opposed to it. I mean, it's just a poorly written bylaw.
That's why I was saying, look at where you think these are acceptable, and then rewrite the bylaw amend on the floor to match that. At least for my vote.
All right. So thank you all for your opinions. So we have a motion, as I said. Do we have any further discussion on it? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call. Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Pedro?
I abstain.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Brandy? Aye. All right. Petition number 2, to amend the table of use regulations to allow marijuana establishments by special permit in the I2 zone. Do we have a motion for a recommendation?
I'll move to send a positive recommendation to the town meeting.
Do we have a second? Second for discussion? Yes, was that you, Malcolm?
Yes.
Seconding? Okay. So do we have discussion on the matter?
Yeah, I just throw up my hands. That's my discussion.
Garfield, I understand that you're frustrated with this process, but we're not authorizing marijuana establishments in the I2. We're granting a special permit, which if you've been following all the special permits so far, you see how rigorous that process is and how the applicants don't always get what they want. And that is the objective of a special permit, is to create a process that allows a great deal of rigor to occur, a lot of questions to be asked, a lot of information to be provided, a lot of opportunity for comment. So that's all it's doing, is creating a process. It's not, it's not a site plan. It's a special permit.
Okay, I've been here about 3 years now, and I haven't heard you say opposed to much of anything in 3 years, truthfully.
There's one big project on Van Dusenville that didn't happen, Garfield.
We can't both talk at the same time, Pedro. Is that correct?
All right. Do you have further comment?
No, I don't. Now if people are going to talk over me, I have no further comment.
Okay. Pedro, did you have any additional comment?
Well, I just wanted to point out that because of the special permit process, there is a large project that didn't happen in town, as a matter of fact. And the other thing that we're doing here is not even approving anything. We're allowing a citizen to propose something to be put to the town at town meeting for a vote. Just because it's
And I'm saying
marijuana
I've seen
doesn't make it bad. We can't both talk over each other first.
Right, that's right.
Okay, so
That's
what
right.
we're doing,
Gentlemen.
what we are doing is going through the process to allow the town's democracy to function. We're not voting anything in here.
Garfield,
We're just giving a positive or negative slant on it, and Pedro,
Yes.
you abstained from giving any kind of positive, negative last time. So I mean, that's everyone's prerogative. That's fine,
It's-
but we're going through the
it's-
process.
Yeah.
So
It's going to town meeting regardless
going
of
to
how we
town
vote
meeting.
here.
Exactly. So, okay.
I mean, I
Jeremy?
do have concerns. I mean, I do have concerns that these are. I mean, yeah, it's a question of, you know, we are allowing manufacturing in town, and so where to put it? It's a very difficult. It's a very difficult question, and so if because this is manufacturing, I'm not so concerned that it's not on the main routes. I think for retail establishment, I think it's very good to have them on the main routes, meaning more eyes on them. But for cultivation or for manufacturing, no. The concerns I have with this is just, you know, that these are really mixed. There's a strong residential component, which I realize that's the whole point of I2, with an industrial component. And so, yeah, I have a little bit of concerns with that.
You're not voting on any special permits right now, though. So the
No, I
question-
realize that.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just whether or not to, yeah, if this is a positive recommendation too. And so,
Okay. All right. Let's see. I think I got to everybody. So, if there's no further discussion, we'll do a vote. Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Pedro?
Aye.
Jeremy?
I'm going to vote nay on this one.
Okay. And I'll vote aye. All right. Citizens petition number 3 is to amend the zoning map in section 9.11 to rezone portions of the MXD district to an R3 district. And so do we have a motion to send a recommendation to town meeting?
I'll move to send a negative recommendation to the town meeting.
Second.
So we have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Malcolm. Do we have any discussion on this item? Jeremy?
So as this is written, I do, and I think I made it clear during the discussion, the areas in which, why in its current form, I would be voting yes to not recommend it to town meeting, and then at town meeting to vote against this. But if it were to be edited on the floor or amended on the floor with some of the on the use table, then my vote at town meeting may change.
Okay, thank you. Garfield, do you have any discussion? Pedro, do you have any discussion?
No.
Jonathan, anything for you?
Nope.
Malcolm?
None for
anything
me,
for you?
Brandy. Thanks for asking.
No problem.
No.
Malcolm? No? Okay. The only thing I would say is that I don't support the petition primarily because I think it runs counter to the effort that this board goes through when we undertake zoning efforts, which is really to reduce nonconformities and to reduce constraints on properties while still trying to find the right balance with acknowledging the fabric of a particular neighborhood. And this was a really, really difficult process when we went through the MXD, trying to understand the wide range of uses occurring in that area. And I feel like the MXD has been doing its job. And to go to the R3 is totally inconsistent with the surrounding neighborhood. So with that, we can do a roll call vote then. Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Pedro?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Brandy, aye. Okay, next item is the planning board's proposal to amend the downtown business mixed use B3 district regulations. Do we have a motion to send a recommendation?
Sorry, Brandy, I'll jump
Sure.
in before you do a motion.
Yeah.
This one, the board can amend. This is your own proposal. So if you do want to discuss amendments to what's before you, you can do that before you vote. It's up to you.
Do we need to do that now, or do we take the motion and do it in the context of the discussion, Chris?
Whatever's easiest to manage. It's a little bit clunky if we put motions out with motions and amend. So it's let's maybe we can work towards the intent of the board here.
Okay.
Yeah,
motion.
Randy, I think if you take a motion now, any amendment would only relate to that motion, not to the.
Okay. Yep, that's a good thought. Okay, so let's not have a motion. Let's have a little bit more discussion on this, because I had noted that we had a handful of things pertaining to both uses and parking that probably warrant a small amount of discussion. So I think the uses one is a little bit easier. Why don't we start there? Does anyone recall the commercial amusement discussion? I was going to go back and look at the definition for commercial amusement. We have these discussions over months and months, and it's hard to remember why we sometimes made a change like that. I feel like there's always some degree of robust discussion that happens, but I'm not recalling the specific. Could we look at the definition, though, if someone's got that open?
I have it.
You
It's
do? Thank you.
commercial amusement, building structures and premises for indoor and/or outdoor recreation, including but not limited to fairgrounds for fairs, animal racing, circuses, and other similar exhibitions.
That is so
So
bizarre.
was this
Why-
like trampolines, like an indoor trampoline, like all of those kinds of things?
Yeah, like it's not a movie theater. It's not.
How about an arcade?
But I mean, but it encompasses.
Trying to remember what the discussion was.
Chris, are you familiar with a more robust definition of commercial amusement? Or is it, if it's as Pedro read it and we take it literally, it sounds really not what we were thinking of for this particular area.
But it says not limited, right?
Well, it's broad, yes. The town has granted 2 commercial amusement special permits that I'm aware of. One was for the possible redevelopment of the fairgrounds under the owners, the current owners. That encompassed a variety of different community and entertainment type uses. And so I believe the application was under the commercial amusements section. The other one, which I think was the same year, was the redevelopment of the old St. James Church, now St. James Place. There was no one definition under which that redevelopment fit, and they applied as in that category, I believe, and received the special permit. So that encompasses a number of different activities in the building, performances, music, etc.
Okay, craft fairs, that kind of thing.
Right. So that's the sort of thing that's discussed during a special permit process, what commercial amusement in the context actually means for that development.
So,
similar to the way in a contractor's yard special permit recently, what was intended in the contractor's yard was nailed down during the discussion in the special permit and then with conditions. So it's written broadly, and then during the process is narrowed down.
Jonathan, what did you want to add?
Yeah, well, I want to first of all point out that it is permitted by special permit in the MXD. And also, as Chris pointed out, that it's a wide range of possible uses there. They're all by special permit, but we have 6 acres of the 100 Bridge Street site that is undeveloped, and if someone wanted to put in, a flea market there or something that brought people to town, that could be a good thing.
Right, 2 acres, given the restrictions. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I don't want to rule things out that we don't know. And
So this is a case where we Yeah, where we'd be relying on that special permit process to weed out options.
And we're not the SPGA, so.
Yeah, there you go. So the select board would have
Select board
the
gets
fun of going through that process. Okay. So in that,
I don't think, it's my opinion that we should review the MXD uses, but that's for another day. I don't think that just because it exists in one place, it needs to exist somewhere else. And the fact that in the definitions itself, it brings up the things that it does, and in the use table says fairgrounds, just opens it up for that type of use.
Yeah, I wonder if
I'm not sure is the
Just
type
hang
of
on,
use
Jeremy.
that we want to encourage in an area that we want to be primarily residential mixed use. That's the thing. And the same with the contractor's yard. I'm not sure that in an area that we want to be primarily not mixed use, but primarily residential mixed use, that we want to promote that kind of activity. It's the same thing. I'm against putting this thing in there, allowing it even by special permit.
So, would you be in favor in the future of adding another definition? So something like St. James Place could happen again under a different category? So that wouldn't, Chris, it wouldn't work as mixed use?
That's a later discussion to change the definitions.
yeah. So if
No,
we were
but-
going to
yeah.
talk about future
I want to
definitions.
clarify the mixed use question. I'm sorry, Brandy.
Sure, go ahead.
The proposal, the B3 in front of you says that certain things can be qualified as mixed use by right, but only certain things can be qualified as mixed use by right. And it's a specific list. Fairgrounds is not in a mixed use by right list.
Yeah, and
place,
so if
a place like
St.
St. James could easily, sorry, John, a place like St. James could easily be applied as a community center operated by a private nonprofit organization. So,
Oh, gosh, Pedro, you're right. The two special permits I was talking about, I believe they weren't, I'm so sorry, that both the fairgrounds, I believe, and St. James Place were permitted under the community center use. I'm so sorry.
Not the commercial amusement.
Right.
Okay.
but we have a fairground that has been not used for the last 20 plus years. So I don't think we have a need for more fairgrounds. So I think it's highly unlikely someone's going to buy expensive real estate close to downtown and put in a fairground. I don't think that's a threat. So,
it doesn't matter to me that it's there. Why does it need to be there? We've done this before, and I don't understand why it is that we want to just allow things in there because we think it's not going to happen. Why not just be specific about it?
It's a commercial amusement.
Something we don't want. We don't want.
I don't have a problem with
circus,
going back to
Cirque du Soleil
no.
or something going in that area for a
Yeah,
month.
commercial
neither do
amusement.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend the use table.
Did we
to
all freeze?
change that from SB back to N.
Second.
Freezing. It's weird.
Did you hear what I said or not?
I did.
No, I
I
think we
did.
froze. It was weird. It's like being in some sort of suspended time warp.
I'd like to make a motion to change the bylaw amendment use table for the commercial amusements and fairgrounds from SB back to N.
Second, Jeremy.
So Malcolm made the motion, Jeremy seconded. Do we have any discussion?
Yes, we do. I would like also to charge the board to, over the next year, to take a look at the commercial amusements and fairgrounds line and definition and see if we could break off the more benign parts of it from the fairgrounds part. And
Guess
so
that's on your to-do list with
Okay.
us.
I will be happy to.
Okay.
I'll second that.
We seem to be having some connectivity problems. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing them, but we have a motion and a second, and the discussion was around a future action item to review commercial amusement. So the motion is to convert the commercial amusement use from SB as is reflected currently to an N, back to an N.
Yes.
There's no further discussion. I'll do a roll call vote. Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Nay.
Pedro?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Brandy? Aye. Okay.
Status quo there then. So that'll
Yes,
remain. as
maintain the
is.
status quo. I assume, Chris, while we're on the table of uses, that we don't need to make a motion to show that family daycare small would be a yes, and it's shown there's nothing there, right?
I'll just,
Can we call that one a typographic error, or do you want us to make a motion on it?
I'm just finding it, sorry.
Sure,
Maybe we
it's second to last, page 14.
Maybe to be overly careful.
Yeah, I was thinking the
Should we
same.
make a motion since we just had a public hearing and this was presented as a public document?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do that. That's more careful. So do we have a motion to reflect that under the table of uses, item G, accessory uses, number 7, that the use for the B3 be shown as yes, and that the struck through item be the special permit?
So moved.
Why do you need to move that? Because it's already there in what's presented.
It's struck, everything is struck through.
It's
the Y was struck.
Both
through.
are struck out.
Oh, okay. All right.
So we're just
Missed one.
clarifying. Okay.
Yeah.
Brandy got it.
So Jeremy moved and Malcolm seconded? Okay. If there's no discussion, we'll just vote on that. Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Pedro?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Brandy? Aye. Okay, great.
Do you have a hand up, Brandy? Do you want to recognize it?
Oh, Eileen? Ms. Mooney? If you're joining by phone, is it *6?
*6 to unmute, Eileen.
Or Eileen had a hard time unmuting last time.
We'll give it just a minute. Eileen, there's also an option. Let's see. Do we have a chat option?
Oh, she's not muted anymore.
There you go.
She's on the phone.
Ms. Mooney, you're unmuted through your computer, it appears.
Your phone is still on mute. *6 your phone.
She probably is hitting *6 and it's not unmuting, and there's probably a cat that is causing some sort of mayhem.
That happened last time. Well, we can come back.
Can she send it in via email?
You can send me an email, Eileen. Okay.
I feel like I should hold, because she usually only does this if we've
We've made a
procedural misstep.
Eileen,
Yes.
Eileen is just
Excuse
checking
me.
on a vote.
While you're waiting on that, I just want to be clear. I don't understand in that motion about reflect under
So the table of
table of
uses.
use, item G number 7.
G number 7.
Use for B3 be shown as yes.
Yes.
And
There's no follow-up motion. I'm just, that was discussion.
okay, so
About the-
where you said something about the struck through, just end it at yes.
Yes.
That the yes not be struck through.
Yes, not be struck through.
We're just, yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure. We'll try one more time. I see Eileen's got her hand up.
I had an email that she was just checking on a vote. So
Oh,
Eileen,
okay.
check your email response for me, and
Okay, great.
if it's all set,
So we voted on this, right? For the yes. I've lost track. Kim, we did vote on that, right? Okay. Okay. So the next item was a discussion around parking.
No, wait a minute.
I thought
There's
Pedro
more.
had a-
I've got a list of the uses.
Oh,
If you don't
I'm
mind.
sorry, Pedro. I thought it was just the commercial amusement that you had a
No,
question
no.
about. Okay, I
I've got a
apologize.
few other items. So we're allowing here large-scale commercial development.
So I'm sorry, you are under,
Can you give us a row? Pedro?
yeah, what row are you
Really
on?
helpful.
Yeah, I'm looking. I'm looking for it. It's number 11 under C11.
Currently, by special permit, no changes proposed.
I know, but again, is this what we want to see in the heart of our town? You know, I'll read you the definition of a large-scale commercial development. Retail stores or centers and or wholesale sales and service with total aggregate gross floor area greater than 20,000 square feet, less than 50,000 square feet, including all floors and buildings on a property, but not including area in an attic, cellar used for storage or utility. First of all, I don't know that there's space for a facility like that, so it's kind of, you know, it doesn't really make a difference, I think. But in any case, if somebody decided that they wanted to buy 6 lots and put 20,000 square foot facility there, is that really what we want there? Given that we are trying really hard to create a mixed-use residential area here.
Yeah, I think we left that in, Pedro, because some of the initial proposals that we saw for 100 Bridge included having the co-op as an anchor at that location. And it, I believe, was 24,000 square feet, and there was some residential above and around it. And so we have an example that at the time seemed amenable to this board. And so I think this is, again, a case where we're saying let the special permit process play out. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I don't like it.
I'm wondering about the scale though as well.
How big is the co-op, Jeremy?
It's not that big.
14,000 square feet.
14,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So
It's a lot
we
smaller.
need more than 20 there.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering. It's very large. And I'm wondering, going along with Pedro said, with looking for mixed use residential. I mean, that was a big part of that property. It was that, and then it had some office space as well. And I think the additional to what is already built, the additional residential, there wasn't a whole lot. There was a little bit upstairs on, oh gosh, why am I forgetting the name of the street? Anyways, and then the one, and right along the river as well. But it was mostly, with the rest of the site, it was mostly that commercial and office space.
So what
so
I'd like to, go ahead, John, sorry.
So the co-op building, the co-op itself is 14,000 square feet. The second floor, or the first floor, if you will, is also 14,000 square feet. So wouldn't that be considered a large scale? I mean, it's larger than, it's over 20,000.
But it wouldn't, because a large scale commercial development is strictly defined as retail, store or center, or wholesale sales and services. So it wouldn't, because they're residential up there. It's a mixed use building.
No,
but
second
he's
floor.
saying 28,000. Yeah, and but
I
but
see. Yeah,
Jonathan,
that second floor retail, right?
But also too, it's a different climate now. We don't, I mean, those spaces are mainly unoccupied. I think there's two of that first floor or non-basement floor that are occupied now. And
Can I make a suggestion? If we could strike out the large scale commercial and go to C23 and make that a select board special permit. Right now it's a yes.
Yeah, I am glad you're pointing that out, because I wouldn't want to do one and not the other.
Yeah.
It's essentially two paths to basically the same item.
So is there a motion?
So
That's my
motion, Pedro?
That is a motion, yeah.
So your motion is, I'm sorry, can you say that again, just because I and Kim didn't totally catch it?
Sure, I move to change large-scale commercial development C11 to a no, and change C23 to a special permit by the select board.
I'll second that.
Well, wait a minute. That means that any retail store requires a special permit? That's crazy.
I don't think so in this
No.
area, John. Sorry.
Oh,
I don't
less
think
than
that there are
the-
lots here.
You're talking about mixed use. If you want to have a commercial store, a furniture store, whatever it is, that's less than 20,000 square feet, you're going to make that a special permit?
Yeah,
That's a
Jonathan's
terrible idea.
correct. Jonathan's correct.
Okay.
This is why we're having discussion.
So Jonathan, do you have do you want to amend that one?
Well, it wasn't
Or-
seconded, was it? Oh, yeah. it was.
I second.
Jeremy seconded it. So we've got
Okay.
a motion and a second and a discussion.
I withdraw the motion.
Pedro withdraws the motion.
The whole thing or
Well, you can make
I'll
another.
withdraw the whole thing and I'll make a new motion.
all right.
Motion to change C11 large-scale commercial development to a no.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Do we have discussion?
I would just like to say that I think this is something that would be good in helping us sell this amendment. To put it bluntly, I think that large-scale commercial development, the idea of it is scary in those neighborhoods, and I think if we take that off the table, it might help.
Scares me.
Because it's an unknown, because you don't know what you're going to get.
You know what? Yeah, exactly.
When they were talking, I don't think I was part of it, but when they were talking about the co-op being it, then it was, you knew what was going there. And so I think it was very different. I mean, you didn't know what was going to happen to Searles, but
Yeah, my only concern is that I think that I don't know that we're going to get mixed use. I don't know. I think it's going to be hard to find anyone who's going to do anything there, and we're not going to. I'd rather leave it as a special permit and let a developer
But it's
put their
Brandy,
proposal forward.
it's not
You don't
mixed
think-
use. It's a retail store or center or a wholesale sales and service center. It's not.
But it could be mixed use.
Mixed use.
In that case, they can do it up to 20,000 square feet. Why would we want any building in this area to be bigger than that?
Well, so the co-op building falls under that.
Not the scale is right.
yeah.
Is it?
No, don't go there right now. Okay,
I
so
think
we
it's-
have
it's
a
occupancy
motion and a.
dictates-
What's
Sorry,
that?
go ahead. Now it's going to say that it's current occupancy dictates the answer to that question.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We have had some discussion. So do we have any further discussion? Otherwise, we'll vote on it. Okay. Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
I think I'm a nay.
Pedro?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Brandy? Nay. Motion passes.
All right, I got greenhouses and garden centers are both by right.
What's wrong with that?
Again, the question that I always ask myself, what are we trying to create here? A residential mixed use area. Is these
So
the types of uses that we want in these kind of areas?
Sure.
'Cause
Greenhouses? Great
it's
to
there
farm
because of-
community? What if I want to grow hydroponic microgreens there?
Well, if you have a house there, then you can do it. But to do a commercial greenhouse is a totally different. It involves parking. It involves delivery trucks. It involves.
What if I want to hire the people that live in the dense development next door so that they don't have to have cars and they can just walk to my greenhouse and work?
Right.
But it's there because of Dolby,
That's like
right?
the most these are the most specious kind of questions that you're asking. And
No,
to a
they're
degree,
not. They're scenarios.
Ask yourself the viability, given the lots that we're focused on, the viability that a garden center would even be a viable business in these areas. It's not.
You're rolling out 100 Bridge Street.
That's where I keep landing is 100 Bridge. And some days
Well, then
Earl's
at least
is,
well then can we at least make them special permits? Because I would hate to have one of these 4,000 or 3,500 square foot lots become a commercial garden center.
Yeah.
I don't think
Or
that's
have a
gonna happen.
commercial greenhouse in it.
Yeah.
At least let's change it to special permit.
Where is it on the use table?
C5 and 7.
What letter?
C57.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've got a lot of yeses.
That's
on this
all
use
over
table.
town, right? Yeah.
So this might be the time to revisit that in the future.
I want this board to recall, we've been through this table at least twice. This is now at least the third time that we've done this.
Well, I've brought these things up before as well, so I'm bringing them up again. Last rates.
I think for someone who's actively engaged in being pollinator friendly, it's counterintuitive to require a special permit for a greenhouse.
It's totally not. Most greenhouses need to have some sort of heating plant, for example.
That's not true.
That is true. A lot of greenhouses do have heating plants.
This use says specifically, provided that no heating plant for a greenhouse shall be within 50 feet from any side or rear lot.
Right.
So it is
That's my point.
recognized a heating.
I'm not inclined to support not having greenhouses there. The Dolby property had greenhouses for years. They were not unattractive. And
Totally different.
Not totally different. 100
Yes,
Bridge,
it is,
same.
Because those are huge lots. What we're dealing with here are the remaining lots really that are viable for development. Okay, 100 Bridge Street. Okay, great. 100 Bridge. Whatever. That's never going to be a greenhouse. I think we all know that. What I'm concerned with is having a giant commercial greenhouse or commercial garden center like a Ward's on a 4,000 square foot lot, kind of jammed in there with all the park. It doesn't make sense. Does you want this in an area that you want to create a walkable community? Doesn't make sense.
But to your point about me making a specious comment, I think that might be equally specious because you just answered it yourself. That
So why
they
allow
have,
it?
But it's been in there forever and has never resulted in any problem. And it leaves it open for the larger lots, which is
I have
why
to-
it was
there-
probably in there to begin with.
Okay, so what's the problem with making it a special permit then? It's still going to be allowed. They just have to present it as a special permit. I think it's totally,
I feel like you're picking this as an argument right now because we're all worn down.
I'm not. I've made this argument before.
I
I'm gonna
know,
make the
and we
argument-
rebuffed it before, and I feel the same way about it now. I just feel like you're going at the last minute here.
Well, can't we make a motion and vote on it?
I have a right.
I
Yeah, I'll make a motion to change both what was it?
C5 and 7.
C5 and 7 to special permits from a yes. From
Do we have
by
a
right.
second?
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have any further discussion on it? Hearing none, we'll vote. Malcolm?
No.
Jonathan?
Nay.
Pedro?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Brandy?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, great. What other ones, Pedro?
I got 3 more, and I'll just throw them out there to save time. We allow horses to be kept here. We're allowed drive-ups by special permit. I think that should be completely eliminated, and lumberyards.
Hold on. So, horses? Well,
Do we
so
go-
5 acres or more, I guess you could have a horse, right?
Which again, you could on Bridge Street. You could have a horse there, but do we really want? Do you want to know?
What if I?
If
No,
you have
I'll
a
quit
5-acre lot-
my specious.
I'm sorry. If you have a 5-acre lot, regardless of what zone you are, you can keep horses.
It's right to farm, right?
Okay, yes, it is.
Exactly.
So, Pedro, help me out again. So, horses, what else? I'm just trying to find the
Lumber
lines.
drive ups.
Drive up.
They
Is that an
allow that by special
accessory
permit.
use?
It is
Drive up or drive through?
G6.
What's the difference between drive up and drive through? Is there any difference?
So, I don't know, but
Not defined.
Pedro's ruining my idea for a COVID-friendly restaurant. Or
Those things
drive-through
are one of the worst things, as second only to streetlights for the environment, with idling cars.
Okay.
There was a whole lot of.
So it's a
idling
special,
cars
but
in
drive up,
COVID.
drive through is a special permit.
Yes, I would
Okay,
like to.
so it's
eliminate
already
all of it.
somewhat protective.
Well, yeah, I would like to make it a no.
Okay, and what was the third one, Pedro?
Lumber yards.
Lumberyard is number 12C, C12.
I think that's right.
Okay, you got to give me the numbers for each of these three, please.
It's C12.
Lumberyard is C12.
Again, that's by a special permit, but it's, you know, I think the-
Drive
the
up
days
and
of-
drive up and drive through, Chris, is G6, G as in girl.
Yep.
And horses is G11. I don't think we need to change the horse one, Pedro, because it qualifies it for 5 acres or more. And so you're not going to have a horse on a 4,000 square foot lot.
But we might have it at Bridge Street.
But we can't.
That would be so much fun.
But I
It'll
think
never
we
pass
can't-
AG review. You can't.
Yeah, we can't
regulate.
control that because because we're a right to farm community.
It's not right to farm.
It's not right to
Agricultural
farm.
exemption.
So
for-
let's say that again, Chris?
Right to farm is different than the agricultural exemption under the zoning act. This is the agricultural exemption.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Right.
All right, so drive up or drive through is currently a special permit. I'm inclined to leave it a special permit.
Agree with that.
Me too.
And
Because those are two big lots.
lumberyard is also a special permit.
I think that's another one where we could safely change that to no and
Yeah.
reduce some fears of what might happen in the neighborhood.
So Pedro, did you make a motion about all three of these?
I brought them up for discussion. If there's interest in changing any of them, I'll make a motion. So if there's interest in changing lumber yards to a no, I will move to that effect.
So Pedro, are you aware that the Taconic parking lot behind the triplex was a lumberyard?
Parking lot.
I'm not, but in that, what about that? Is it a
Was a
lumberyard today?
lumberyard in the heart of downtown.
Yeah, but is it a
Not
lumberyard
anymore.
today? Was it a lumberyard when the triplex was there? Once it was put there?
No.
Okay,
Makes sense,
so
though.
if C12, if there seems to be a consensus about changing that one from special permit to a no,
I made a motion.
I second it.
okay. Pedro made a motion. I don't know, Kim, did you get that? Because I didn't. Malcolm seconded. Okay. Do we have further discussion on lumberyard being a no in the B3? Hearing none, we'll vote. Malcolm,
Aye.
Jonathan,
Nay.
Pedro,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Brandy, aye. All right. Was that it? Okay.
Yep, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right. We are not quite done. Parking.
Parking.
So,
Okay.
Malcolm, this was your concern that we should be more aligned with the parking from the, what did you say, the national apartment?
My concern is we're going overboard on reducing parking in as a planning board, and that bothers me a lot because we do have a parking problem in town for visitors and for shoppers, and I hate to create a parking problem for residents. And I have two suggestions. One would be to just delete 9.4.5 altogether and just let it fall back to 6.1 for parking, or change the one space per that where it says only one space will be required in several places in the amendment here to 1.5 spaces, and eliminate the clause that says, but no new spaces shall be required in the thing where it says that the existing parking spaces shall be retained. On number 3 there. So, yeah, go ahead.
Pedro, was this your that when looking at that lot on Church Street for redevelopment for housing, was that where this discussion part of where this discussion on parking was? I can't remember.
No, the 1 unit per dwelling is already in the bylaw.
Right.
Yeah, that is the one
spot per
parking
dwelling,
space
right?
per dwelling is in the bylaw.
Right.
I had nothing to do with this parking issue.
Oh, okay. No, it was open space on that one.
So if we fall back on 6.1, it goes immediately to 2 spaces per dwelling unit and a much more elaborate calculation for other uses. So I think the intent to keep 9.4.5 was to simplify for purposes of the uses in this particular zone.
Well, it doesn't simplify because it creates a half-page paragraph to describe it.
This is Chris. So so as written, this proposal includes, in mixed uses, it includes the ability to cut in half the requirement for the commercial side of the mixed use. That's item 4 there. Parking requirements for business and industrial uses shall be calculated per 6.1 multiplied by half. So it reduces the requirement there. Malcolm, if you're concerned only about the residential requirement, then maybe you focus on item 2 and item 4A.
Yeah, I am mainly concerned about residential. I mean, I think business owners can take it on their own whether they need more parking spaces or not, or whether they can move into that place with the number of parking spaces they have. But I think residences, it's a little bit different. And
I'd encourage you to work with this within this rather than reverting back to 6.1 totally.
I'm fine with that. And so I would suggest that we consider changing 1 space on number 2 to 1.5 spaces, changing 1 to 1.5 on number 4, as Chris suggested.
4A.
4A. And then also, I'm not real happy about the clause on number 2, and maybe the whole paragraph number 2 had to do with no new spaces. But I think if somebody changes the use for a building, even if they're not changing the building, if they're changing the use, the parking should reflect the new use. And it looks, and the way I read this is that if somebody changes a use in a building, but they don't change the building, but I'm not sure.
You're reading it correctly. I think you're reading it correctly, Mo.
So they could change the use, not change the building, and not have to create any more parking spaces, even though they've created more housing units.
I wonder about that because how does this affect the existing small lots now? Like if they were to take the current buildings and make more units in them, and they don't have the room for parking beyond.
That's a problem.
It constrains the use. I mean, that's always part of our discussion is that parking constrains the use.
I don't know. Back when I used to rent, it was one of the questions I asked was about parking when I rented an apartment. And so I don't know. I wonder about this.
And, you know, I mean, and then we do have all of these discussions about, you know, I mean, I know we keep having these discussions about, you know, walkable and downtown and that sort of thing. And I mean, I work with people that live near the co-op and don't have cars. And so you know, I'm not sure for some of these existing houses, if right now they're single family and they want to change it to 3, but they don't have, you know, whatever it is, 4.5 spaces. Yeah.
You don't know if that would be an impediment, or you don't know?
Yeah.
That would be
Well,
possible?
I'm wondering if that would be an impediment.
We don't have anything in here that says we can waive it.
Well, you
I mean,
can.
We
seems like
could, let's see, parking requirements of 2 and 3 and 4 could be waived if it's a special permit. So it could be waived with a special permit.
But that's what I worry about having for some of these small lots for it to have to be a special permit. You know, if they're just changing a single family to 3 family or whatever.
But that's Malcolm's concern, is that it might not fit.
Yeah, but if it's an existing building, to me it's different than, I don't have a problem with the other ones. You know, if you're gonna expand the building, well, this one, if you're gonna expand the building, then you need to, or if you're gonna build a new. But this one, I don't know. Because the only other, on the big side, the only one we're talking about is Searles, which has quite a large parking lot now. I mean, I guess if it were, I don't know, but anyway.
Well, we're focused mostly on residential.
So Malcolm, if right now, if we manage to push this through and we could get rid of the open space requirements, somebody could add an extra bedroom to an apartment.
Okay.
Right? And increase their, so you would be, is it not in a way punitive to the owner of that lot to say you have to provide an extra space here if you're gonna add an extra unit, even though you're not changing anything, you're not not an extra unit, but an extra bedroom to a unit. So you're making something from a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom. Now suddenly, you're asking to include an extra bedroom.
I think it's.
But it would be because if that addition is bigger than 500 square feet, then it's considered a substantial expansion.
Well, I mean, if it has a kitchen and a bedroom, a bathroom, and a bedroom, and it's a unit that's separate, then that's different than just an additional bedroom, right?
No, but if they have a unit, it's currently a 1-bedroom, the open space requirement's out of there, so now it gives them enough space to build an extra bedroom. Will they be required to build an extra parking spot? Right now, no.
I think it's parking space per dwelling unit, not bedroom, right? So
yeah, but it would be a substantial expansion. So we would have to, if we go to 1.5,
3.
or whatever it is, if we're adding more parking requirement to it, then somebody would have to, part of their open space might have disappeared because now they got to provide more parking for enlarging their just making an extra bedroom or whatever. Or if it's a bathroom or sunroom.
They have to add more parking for an extra bedroom.
25% or 500 square feet.
Why would they have?
I see you, Jonathan.
Why would they have to have more parking for an extra bedroom?
Because it would be hypothetically substantially improved.
Right.
It would be a substantial expansion.
It's still a 1-family dwelling, right?
No, but this doesn't say that.
It's not okay. So Jonathan has a statement. Let's see what he can illuminate us with.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that first of all, we have I don't know how many people living downtown in the B district, and there's no parking requirement, and those people are doing just fine. And to take this area, which is the most pedestrian-friendly area that we have, that's right next to downtown, and to add parking spaces to it that we have to decide whether we want to promote parking or whether we want to promote residential development. I'm in favor of residential development. Every time you add parking spaces, you diminish the possibility of residential development. So that's how you have to see it. And take it.
I'm sorry, Jonathan, that's not the way I see it. I don't see it as a choice between housing and parking. I think parking is required with housing. It's not either or. And I don't think we can have housing in this area without parking, unless it's right downtown.
We're providing parking. We're providing parking.
I don't agree with that. I mean, and I don't agree that we should sacrifice housing for parking. I never said that. I don't agree with that. I don't promote that. So
that's effectively what your recommendation
is. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that housing has to go with parking, and that the one parking space per unit is not sufficient.
So, wait, hold on. Can I please ask Malcolm a question? Because this is the issue that he raised, and I know he's been doing a lot of research about it. You've been giving this a lot of thought, Malcolm, over the last couple of months. But so since one parking space per dwelling unit has been in place since 2007, are we seeing a problem originating in this neighborhood, or are you foreseeing something we're doing now that is going to potentially create a problem that isn't there under the current zoning?
I thought we'd already agreed that the goals of multifamily housing and mixed use failed in this district. So I don't know that there are a lot of mixed use developments or multifamily developments in this that come under the zoning that were developed in this. I don't know of any.
Well, to be clear, they failed because it had onerous restrictions. Open space and parking. And then the incentive packages that came along with it were nonsensical and too difficult to get through. So
how was parking onerous if there was only one space required per unit?
I think Pedro's trying to say there's a group of things that may have conspired against the success of the zoning's intent.
You had to leave enough open space in which you couldn't put a parking space.
Okay.
So you had to. Yeah, so now you can. You're right. But you can't deny the fact that this is really the fact of our lives, worldwide, our existence. That the more space that we make to park cars has tapped into the space that we have to live and function as a society and as a community. It has a huge effect.
That is absolutely true, Pedro, and it is a worldwide problem and it's a global problem, but it's not a problem that we can solve by reducing parking spaces in Great Barrington.
But to Jonathan's point, and to Brandy's point, there has been no problem, right? And I think as a community too, we need to start thinking about on-street parking as not being the end of our lives. Everybody does it.
You cannot park anywhere if it's not off-street in the winter here.
If you want to,
yes, you can park. You can park in places. There's places to park on street in the wintertime in town. There are places to park. So the point is that the way that our society, the way that our transportation planners have told us for decades and decades now, that we have to deal with parking needs to be rethought. There's just no question about it. And everybody, communities across the country are doing it. There are some communities who have managed to push through regulations that eliminate parking requirements. And those communities, for the most part, are thriving communities. So, I think leave it well enough alone. There's no problem right now. There's no point in fixing something that's not broken.
So there's can I, Malcolm, given what Pedro just said, there's not anything that prohibits anyone from adding more parking, and I think we actually saw that for the Benton Avenue apartments. Chris, you just recently had cited the statistic of what the parking ratio was there when we were discussing Maple Avenue. And I think it was a little bit over 1, right? 1.4, 1.6.
Yeah, but the original proposal was one space per unit. It was 50 spaces for 48 units, and that would have been a disaster in that place.
Are you talking about Maple Avenue?
I'm talking about Maple Avenue.
I'm talking about the Benton apartments.
No, I'm talking about the Maple Avenue.
Bentley.
Yeah.
Bentley, I'm sorry, yes. Sorry, it's late.
Bentley. Which were the Bentley?
The ones that are on Hundred Bridge site.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure about that, and I don't know what we permitted on that, what was permitted on that, but I do know when we were talking about the Maple Avenue apartments that if that had been permitted with 1 space per unit there, that would have been a problem, a real problem for the neighbors. Because where are people going to park? They can't park on Route 7. They can't park in neighbors' yards. Where are they going to park?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Before we draw conclusions, we have to actually see what happens there. So if the building gets done, we will have a great example of how parking works. As it is today, we do have one great example, and that's Beach Street Commons. And I will encourage everyone, and I know the people on the Triangle are going to hate me for saying this, but drive on Silver Street as often as you can and look into Beach Street all hours of the day and tell me if there's a parking problem. And I believe they've got 2, excuse me?
Empty.
I believe they're required to have 2 spots per dwelling unit there.
So overnight, is it empty?
Yes, I wouldn't say it's empty. There are cars parked in there, but there are plenty of parking spots there.
So is it more than a third? empty?
Malcolm, I will check in the morning when I'm up very early, and I will get back to you.
You run by.
I will run by and I will take a picture.
Listen, I wear out Silver Street for this exact reason because I'm always checking on these things.
In the interest of just trying to come to a conclusion, do you have a motion that you want to put forward, Malcolm?
Yeah, I would like to move that the 9.4.5 be amended where it says number 2 and 4, where it says 1 space and 1 parking space, that be amended to say 1.5 spaces. And I would also amend to eliminate number 3 altogether.
And you want to do that all as one motion?
Can I amend the motion? Is that allowed?
Nobody seconded it yet.
I'll second it.
Second for discussion?
Second.
Yes.
I'd like to split the motion.
Okay, I'll withdraw number 3 from the motion.
You want to take this as 2 separate items, Malcolm?
Is that okay, Jeremy?
Second.
Okay. So the motion on the table is to amend 9.4.5 number 2 and number 4A to change it from 1 parking space to 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit. Is that correct, Malcolm?
Yes.
Okay, and so Malcolm made the motion, Jeremy seconded. Do we have discussion on the matter? More than we've already had? Okay, so we'll vote. Malcolm?
Aye.
Jonathan?
Nay.
Pedro?
Nay.
Jeremy?
I vote aye.
Brandy? Nay. All right. Did you want to offer a second motion, Malcolm?
No, it's not worth it. I don't want to waste any more time.
Okay. Do we have any other edits on this zoning item, gentlemen? Hearing none, then we're back to where we were an hour ago. Good discussion.
I move to send a positive recommendation to town meeting.
Thank you, Jonathan.
On this amendment,
Amended.
as amended.
Okay. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Okay. I think Pedro seconded it. And is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Malcolm?
No.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Pedro?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Randy? Aye. All right. Thanks, Malcolm.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, Chris.
Still 7 people in the audience. Well, actually,
There
no,
are.
there's 6. There's 6. 2 of those are in mute. So
So do we have a town planners report, Chris?
no, not tonight.
No town planners report. Do we have any board or committee updates, issues, or concerns? Hearing none. Do we have any citizens?
Wait.
Oh,
I have
sorry.
one question. One question for Chris. It's not really your germane, but or domain, but
you'll ask it anyway.
Yeah,
Jack of all trades.
the Community Software Consortium, which provides assessors field cards to the public, the state website. That's been down for a couple of weeks, and all the assessors, Egremont and Great Barrington and a bunch of other towns, have a link to that if you want a field card. And so those are all out of commission. I don't know if anyone in town knows about it, so that's why I'm bringing up. If you could talk to Carol or somebody, or Mark or whatever. And find out
is this
what's
a planning
on
board matter, Jonathan? This is a random Jonathan's issue or concern?
it. No, this is a community matter.
So why have the link? Is that what you're saying? If it's down or what?
It'd be nice if someone could find out what's wrong with the link.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
I mean, and it is a planning tool, Brandy.
Yeah, John, can you find out if people are renting homes by accessing those assessor cars? No?
No, it only. Well, it will tell you if it's more than one family, but it won't tell you if it's owner occupied or second family or second.
And can you get ownership information, for example? I guess it doesn't really matter. I mean, I was thinking that
It provides ownership information.
we can't really, it's anecdotal to say that somebody who owns a home under an LLC, for example, is necessarily running their house as a business, I think, right?
Well, I can't testify to that. It's likely, but it's unclear.
Right. You're muted, Malcolm.
So we can't use that as a source of Airbnb data?
Yeah.
Right.
I know you're thinking.
Searching for it. The housing, I brought up this thing, if I can, Brandy, if you allow me. I'm on this housing group with BRPC, and somebody brought up this rental inspection program that they have up in I think it's either Adams or North Adams. And
Williamstown.
Sorry?
It's in Williamstown.
Oh, it's in Williamstown. So they talk, very positively about it, and they say that they don't have landlords problems with landlords signing up to have their places inspected, and they're able to gather that kind of data with that kind of program. Now, the housing subcommittee had no interest in pursuing it, but it might be. I don't know how they did it. It's like magic, if you ask me, because I don't know why. In fact, I think we've had some renters in town complain about too much data, and we all know about that one article that Kate Burke tried to push through a couple of years ago. But I don't know if it's something worth seeing, because I think it's still important information that we've not discussed or not addressed or not been kind of on our radar, and it'd be nice to know from a housing perspective who is actually using their homes as a business, either as an owner occupant or as somebody from out of town who's just buying up lots and houses and renting them out short term. I don't know.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we know from the housing study that. Go ahead, Garfield.
That's being facetious.
Oh. All right. Any other board committee updates, issues, or concerns? Okay, so we were just about to get to citizen speak. So if there's any citizens who would like to speak, I see Ms. Forbes.
Hi, Denise Forbes, 325 North Plain Road. I just wondering, you mentioned the Bridge Street project, and I basically wanted to say, is it correct to assume that you guys are the ones that approved the plans to move forward for that project, even though it had toxic waste and it had PCBs under the soil and dioxins on the surface soils? And I'm just wondering, a project like that should not be allowed to be rented out until it's remediated. And there's so much talk going on right now about remediation, but nothing's happening. There's so many ways they can remediate, but no one's done anything about it. And as the planning board, I would be concerned. We've raised this with the health board. You got to realize low-income people are going to be living in these houses with children who will be walking on the berms and playing on the berms, and these things can be permeable. And there's a lot of health issues and risks there. I just wanted to know what your feedback is on this project.
Yeah,
It's
so
not this board's
yeah,
jurisdiction.
this board didn't have jurisdiction on that.
Okay, and one more thing. As far as our proposal for our amendment that you guys voted negatively on, as far as a private citizen, how can you really ask a private citizen where would a suitable location be for cultivation of marijuana if that bylaw went through for 500 feet? That's something that we shouldn't have to worry about. And Egremont has a lot of land, so I would really recommend Egremont. But anyway, that's my thought. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Ms. LeBaron, your hand's up.
Sorry about that. I thought I was unmuted. Michelle LeBaron, 70 Division Street. I just wanted to, maybe Jonathan and I are maybe the only two people here that remember the Taconic lumber in the center of Great Barrington. My father was a builder, and so spent a lot of time there. But it's an example, if you look at that area now, and both Jonathan and I remember what it was before, it's an example of just because something's the way it is, let's keep doing it. You can see that the area has been, cleaned up and it's much nicer. So there's chatter about amending the trend in certain areas. So a trend is such as a lumber yard in the middle of town, just because it's there previously doesn't mean it's going to go there again. I really enjoyed the discussion on number 4, your proposal. The reason why I listened to it so intently, it was filled with contradictions as compared to your discussion on number 1, our petition amendment. We were criticized at the writing. I think somebody said it was poorly written. Yeah, the planning board is making an amendment to a bylaw already, or to the table of uses that was described as confusing, that it conflicts, that it prohibits. Reference was made to the special permit process. Well, I've had my experience with special permit process, and they're expensive. The town of Great Barrington has their town council. The applicant has their council. As a citizen, to sit there without legal counsel, I would not recommend at all any citizen that has any vested interest in a special permit to appear before your board or any board without a lawyer. So it's expensive for the citizen. And a couple times during the discussion on number 4, it was, why risk this in a special permit process? Why, let's just eliminate certain language so it can't happen. And this was inspired by Ms. Schatz, who talked about the character of her neighborhood, the lifestyle in her neighborhood, and residential enjoyment. Yet, it seems to me that there's certain areas of Great Barrington that have been segregated, that the residents there don't have the rights to these simple things. And I'm quite angry about it. Let's just say you didn't suck the life out of me by your criticism. You inspired me. And it's fortunate that this planning board has the expertise available to it to spend a couple hours talking about their amendment, such as Chris Rumbold. And Chris, I'm giving you credit for your expertise. I'm not criticizing you. And when all is said and done, you can always run it by town council that I, as a taxpayer, paid for. So I think I'm a little angry at this planning board, and not that you didn't agree with that amendment, but to criticize how it was composed by a group of citizens without the help that this board has. And I'm pretty angry about that. I'm not angry at all that you didn't support it. That was expected. You didn't support it in March 2020. But your attitude towards the citizens and that we lack the expertise in crafting a bylaw that clearly even the planning board has difficulty with, as an example number 4 here. And so I would like you to think about that. We will be working on that amendment, but just as you would seek legal counsel, so will we. Thank you.
So, Ms. LeBaire, I just want to respond to that real briefly. We're all citizens in this community, and all of us are doing what we all think is best in making decisions. And so your process is not less valuable than ours. I think that's number one. Number two, part of the reason that we have these public hearings is to get comments, to gain new perspectives, as I had mentioned earlier. And so on a citizen's petition, we hope you have gained some new perspectives. There were a number of suggestions that were made. There were concerns that were raised about things that might not pass the AG's office, and we can't amend your petition. We can only make those comments. So I hope you can understand that as part of the process. All right, is there any other citizen speak? All right, I want to thank everyone for hanging in there tonight for a very long meeting, and we will adjourn at 9:36. Thanks, everyone.
Good job.
Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Good night.